stuff plugged in right now, so it probably won't be negatively impacting things, but we will, yeah, we'll just get rolling on this in just a little bit. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions that you have about the trip. If there's any gear that you're interested in, any of the stuff you've heard about, we can chat about that in the chat, which I think will be cool. Definitely chat with each other as well, because everybody's probably heard about different stuff that's coming out, different rumors. There was some new stuff released just this morning, kind of in anticipation of Superbooth, and so I think it'll be cool to see all that stuff, to see what's out there, see what all the new things are. And yeah, so in this video, or in this stream, we're going to talk a little bit about how I get ready for shows, how I get things packed up, what I bring, what I don't bring, why, all that kind of stuff. So so that way, if anybody is into traveling and playing shows, this will be something that will give you a little bit of help with that. And so feel free to ask any questions that you have. I know it's kind of a weird thing when you're getting ready to go to a show and you have to pack things up and you're used to having things set up in your studio and all that kind of stuff. Cool, looks like we've got some people in the chat. Hey Kurt, hey Ed, good to see you guys. Thank you guys for chiming in. Let me know when you join in the chat, again, where you're chatting or where you're watching from. One of my favorite things about these live streams is how far reaching they've gotten. I think the last one we had everywhere from, I think we had Iceland, we had Russia, we had Mexico, we had US, we had Canada, we had a whole bunch of different places in Europe as well. So yeah, it's very cool to see. So definitely put something in there. Let me know where you're from. Let's see. Excited to see the travel aspect of the hardware. Good. I'm glad. That's kind of why we're doing this. It's, you know, this channel, as well as a lot of these channels, tend to be a lot about here's the gear, here's what it does, here's the specs of the gear. And on my channel, I try to do a little bit of here's how I use the gear and here's some ideas on how to use the gear, but always coming at it from the perspective of somebody who travels and plays shows and performs internationally and stuff like that. So it's not, it's a different perspective, because it's a perspective of a user and somebody who, you know, needs to get certain things out of the gear, that needs the gear to do certain things. And so that's always the perspective I try to give. And this is another one of those perspective videos, because you know, something that I don't know that I've ever seen a video about on YouTube is about this stuff. Is about how to actually pack up your gear and go to a gig. What do you bring, and how do you decide, and all of that stuff. So I guess jumping right into that, first things first, I'm going to change the view here a little bit so you can see a little bit of an overview. You know, you've seen this setup. It's actually dark right now because getting things ready to go, but just wanted to show you a little bit about what I'm bringing and why I'm bringing it before we get going into how I'm bringing it. But first things first, the kind of the two core pieces that don't ever really change within my setup, at least not within the most recent modern version of the setup, is the Octatrack, which I use for performance mixer. So everything kind of gets mixed through that and summed, and then it has all the performance effects with the crossfader and all of that stuff, and then it goes out from that to either to an analog heat or directly out to the house, kind of depending on the size of the venue and kind of which place I'm playing. The other piece that's not really changing anymore is the Oxy One. It's kind of the core sequencer that I use for everything, and you know, I do use the internal sequencer in the Digitact for drums, but for anything that's melodic, I use the Oxy One, and I've talked about that a bunch on the videos. But it's mostly because it is it's really good at quantizing things to key and still generating things randomly. So you can randomly generate notes and melodies and bass lines and things like that really quick on the fly. So for an improvised show, it's an important piece of the kit. And those don't change. Now the other machines do change, but when you've got something like the Oxy that's controlling what's going into the machines and controlling what they're doing and kind of what they're saying in the conversation, and then you've got something like the Octatrack that's controlling the way that's coming out the other end, those pieces in the middle, the machines themselves can come and go and can be really flexible and change. So the last batch of shows that I played, I was using the analog rhythm for drums. I have the Syntact for voices. In this spot in my modular case, I had an assimilator for some samples, and I had a 1010 black box on the side for some longer time stretch samples. So now with this setup, because I was able to bring in the Digitac 2, that can take care of the longer time stretch samples, so I don't need to bring the black box anymore. That can take care of the extra voices that I was getting from the Syntac, because I've got 16 tracks in this now instead of just 8. So that pulled the Syntac out. And a lot of the functionality of the manipulating sound and the quality of sound that I was getting out of the rhythm, I can get close to it. It's still not quite as good, but I can get close to it with the Digitac 2. So what that allows me to do is scale down and use a much smaller machine. Here, I'll just really quickly grab, just to give you an idea of the scale. You can see the Digitac 2. Here's the Analog Rhythm Mark II over the top of it. So it is significantly larger, and I can tell you also significantly heavier. So when you're limited to what you're carrying, and the limitations we'll talk about in a little bit when I show you a little bit more about the packing and stuff, trying to scale things down to as small a size as possible is very, very key to what I'm doing. So that's why I was able to kind of move to this setup. So what's cool about this is that this allows all of my gear to be carried on in hand luggage when I travel, which is really important to me. I have a huge fear of checking gear, and so I didn't want to check things in. I've just had problems in the past, and I've seen and heard too many horror stories of things getting broken, pieces of gear getting lost or delayed, which when you're on a time schedule and you're going from gig to gig, you can't have something delayed and wait an extra 3 or 4 days to have something arrive. So it's having everything go into carry-on luggage is something that's been very, very important for me. So with that said, we'll go into that in just a little while about how the gear, like how I pack the gear up and where I put things and what I do to protect it and what stays patched and plugged in and what doesn't, and why I've chosen certain pieces of kit. So let's see here. I'm just going to check out the chat just a little bit. Check in with everybody. Hey everybody, Kurt, Jason, hey. James, don't know if you've covered this topic previously, but at some point it'd be interesting to see what kind of sound sample prep before the show. I haven't done that much because I really wasn't doing a lot of sample prep before. I had some very basic samples that I was using, but most of my workflow has always been synth-based. Now with the Digitac 2, it's kind of pushing me to need to do a bunch more sample-based stuff, and it unfortunately, I'll let you in. Sorry, I'll let you in on a little secret. I absolutely hate managing samples. It's a giant pain in the ass. It's one of my least favorite things in the world because I work on a computer all day, every day. I'm a consultant, so I'm always looking at like spreadsheets and stuff. So the last thing I want to do is go into files and folders and rename things and move them around and build trees of files to be. I hate it. I absolutely can't stand it. So it's one of the reasons why I've always kind of stayed away from sample workflows. But the Digitakt 2 is just so good that it's worth that extra prep time in advance to be able to do that. And that's something that I'll definitely go into in another video coming up really soon, is how I'm doing that. Right now, I'm kind of trying to work that out. So I downloaded a bunch of samples into it that I had from other stuff, mostly production samples. With the exception of a few drums that I had that were things that I had made in the analog rhythm, and then moved over here. I love the kicks I'm able to make in the rhythm, so I make kicks there and then I move them over and put them in the Digitakt to play. And then I have the samples from the Percons that if you want, you can go to my web store. There's a Percon sample pack that I put out where I sampled a whole bunch of different things, specific sounds, and then also each one of the 4 voices, kind of the range of what the voice does. So it would be a folder of, voice 3, and it'll be like from bass lines all the way to snares to claps to hi-hats, all from one thing because it's all in one voice. So yeah, I put those samples in here. I got some samples from friends and things like that, loaded those in here, and I've kind of gotten to a place where I've got enough stuff that I can use to do really whatever I want to do. And one of the great things with the Digitakt, and whether it's the Digitakt 1 or the Digitakt 2, is that it is you have so much control over it that it really feels like a synth. And the only difference is that instead of the sound coming from an oscillator, the sound is coming from a sample. So you get all of the flexibility and versatility of samples, and being able to make or have pretty much any sound in the world. And then you get the ability to then treat it like a synth with effects and envelopes and filters and LFOs and things like that. So it's very different from kind of your traditional sampler. So yeah, because of that, I was able to change things up a little bit with my workflow. So let's see here. Yeah, analog rhythm is a chunker. Yeah, they're huge. I mean, super comfortable, right? And Kinga, great to see you on here. Kinga's a huge user of analog rhythms. I believe they perform with 2 of them, if I'm not wrong. Chime in, Kinga, if you'd like. But the workflow on that size of a machine is really super comfortable, especially even performing live. Like, it's great to have that amount of space to work, have the screen that you can see really clearly compared with the Mark 1, have a whole bunch of extra knobs and buttons that you can use for things so you don't have to dig through menus. Having the pads on there is great as well. So it is very comfortable to use, and it's very uncomfortable to haul around, especially when you're traveling, and especially when you got to get everything into hand luggage and get on a plane. So it comes to the point where it's like, do I bring the Analog Rhythm Mark II or do I bring clothes? And so, you got to kind of bring some clothes sometimes. But yeah, it's huge. It is almost as big as the 6U84, as the Eurorack. And actually, when I show you how I pack, it was taking up almost the same amount of space in my bag as the Eurorack was, and basically just as heavy as well. So yeah, I'll never get rid of it. It will always be my studio drum machine. It is by far my favorite drum machine I've ever had and ever tried, and in my opinion, the best drum machine ever made. And yeah, controversial, I know. People are going to be like, what about a 909? What about, I know, but you can put 909 sounds into it and add synths on top of it. So anyway, I'm never going to get rid of the Analog Rhythm. It will always be my studio machine. And I also still like to use it to perform live when I don't have to travel. So if I'm playing a show here in Denver, I will still use my Analog Rhythm because I really like it. I enjoy the feel of it, and playing on it is really, really comfortable. So let's see here. Do the same thing, sampling my favorite pedals into my Digitakt 2. don't miss them when I'm away from home. Yeah, I mean, as you can see when you look around, I mean, I have entirely too much gear here, and obviously a lot of stuff I could never bring with me on the road to a show, even locally here I couldn't bring. So that's why the Digitact is also very attractive, because it allows me to sample a bunch of this stuff that I love to use anyway, and sample things that I'm using for production and things like that, and just take them with me in the Digitact. And it was something that I didn't switch to before with the Digitact 1 because of the lack of storage that it had. It only had 1 gig of memory, and so you couldn't load a lot in other than one shots. And so then I would bring the 1010 black box, but then you don't get the kind of synthesis capabilities. And I was just like, you know what, I'll just use a synth. And now with this, being able to have stereo samples that are much, much longer and having 20 gigs of memory, it just makes it so that now it can do those things that I wanted it to do in the past. So it's why, for me, it's found a place in my setup. So let's see here. Prepping samples becomes so much easier with kits. Yes. Rather just select a kit during performance. So yeah, I mean, the kits are a huge thing. And as I mentioned before, the Digitact 2 made it possible for me to not bring the analog rhythm. A big part of my performances is being able to swap kits out on the analog rhythm, because I will have kind of certain baseline drum patterns, but if I want to change things up and move on to a new section of the night, a new song, I guess, in quotes, the being able to have kits and just kind of drop those in there and drop those over what I'm doing to start those transitions is really important. And that's something that that I'll definitely be doing with the Digitact 2. One thing, actually, I can show you this. Pop off my deck saver here. With the Digitact 2, the way I'm kind of setting this up, the way I have this used is that, and I mentioned this on the last live stream, but you were asking about how I'm loading up the samples and prepping the samples. So 1 through 6, these first tracks here are all the time drum tracks, and they're always the same type of instrument by space. So 1 is always a kick, 9 is always going to be the rumble that goes with that kick. 2 is always a clap or snare, 3 and 4 are percussion, 5 is a closed hat, and 6 is an open hat. So those will always be the same for me personally in every kit, so that if I'm playing along and I've got a kick pattern with a hi-hat pattern that's going along, but I want to change up the sounds, I can just load another kit and those patterns will still keep going. And so there's some continuity in the transition from one section to the next, where it'll just change up the sounds, but the pattern will stay the same. So that's why those will always be the same. Now, 7 and 8, the way I have it set up right now is that is atmospheres and vocals, just kind of background noise and vocals. I have a lot of field recordings for atmospheres, so like wind in the trees or the sounds of people in a train station or whatever, because I like to have that stuff in the background as kind of like to set the tone or the ambiance, whatever I'm doing. And then vocals as well, so that way, now that they can be time stretched, to be able to have vocals on there that I can still use in the same way that I was using the black box for them. Then, as I mentioned, 9 is the rumble for 1, for whatever the kick is on 1. And it's because I like to sequence the rumbles rather than using effects to do them, because I think that uses up a lot of effects and you lose a lot of control over it. I still do it with effects when I'm producing, because it's a lot easier to then record the send effects, or record the effects that you're putting on that, and then you can kind of regain control over the rumble part of your rumble kick. But when in live performance, it's much harder to do that, and so I put those on 2 separate tracks, so it helps me retain some of that control over the separate pieces of the kick and the rumble. So yeah, let's see here. What are we at? Atlas is pretty good for sample management. What is Atlas? Put into the comments what that is. I haven't used that. As far as sample management, one thing that I was super excited that I found that I'd heard about, but again, I wasn't using bulk samples, so I wasn't doing this a lot, but just built into a Mac, being able to bulk rename things or, bulk change names or replace certain pieces of names was really super handy. So I actually used that a bunch on there. So Atlas, maybe that, or it may be something for organizing files. So definitely let me know. Have you tried XO Handy Sample Manager? No, I have not. I will keep those in mind because now that I'm being forced into being a sample guy, I think I'm going to have to learn how to better manage my samples. So yeah, I will do that. Let's see, absolutely hear you. Any kind of Oxy sequencer prep? No, famously, I don't on purpose because the drums I will prep a bit in advance, and it's really only basic patterns. So I'll have 4 on the floor kick, offbeat hats, 16th note closed hats, things like that. So I will have those pieces and parts in there, and then I can build off of those, and it's really easy for me and quick for me to sequence it or change up those sequences in the Electron sequencer. The Oxy, I only do the melodic stuff, and all of that part of my shows is completely improvised. So what I'll do is I'll go and I'll set up for the show, and I will do a sound check, and I'll just kind of sound check with whatever patterns I had on from the last time that I played that auto-saved or whatever. And then as soon as I'm done with the sound check, I go through and I blank out all of my sequencers so that I'm starting from a blank sequencer at the beginning of a show. And so that way for me, the whole show can be something brand new from scratch, because nothing in my modular, I shouldn't say nothing, most things in the modular can't save presets. The Oxy one can, but I don't really. I have all the voices kind of the same on all 8 of the channels, and I don't save any presets to have them be different sounds. I like to make the sounds on the fly. Yeah, so I'll sequence on the fly from the Oxy, and then I'll make the sounds on the fly within the synth itself, or synths, I guess, themselves. So yeah, so not a lot of prep in the Oxy. Every once in a while, I'll make a pattern while I'm screwing around, and I'll be like, wow, that's kind of cool, and I'll save it. So like, here, I'll show you. If you look in the Oxy and you just look on the pattern section, like normally all of these squares are different sections. Each one of these lines is a different sequencer. And so each one of these would be a pattern from the sequencers. So as you can see, they're basically all empty. It's because, again, I don't save stuff. I had a conversation when I did the live stream with EasyBot when I was in Seattle the last time. I was telling him that like the way he writes music and the way I write music is the same, except at the end of a session, I don't save, and he saves so that he can so that can be redone again, or so they can be performed, so that it can be it's possible for that song to live on beyond that session. And for my stuff, it's not, sometimes to my detriment. Sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I would have saved that was good, I wish I could get back to it. But for the most part, I try to get proficient enough at my machines that I can get back to stuff quickly enough, and it's never exactly the same, but it's close enough that it works. So let's see here. It would be a great video to see the process you do to sample, for example, the Syntakt, and then how do you use it in the Detact 2? Yep, I'll definitely do a sampling video after I get back from Superbooth, because I think that it'll be, I'll know the machine a lot better by then. So I'll be able to do a lot more within it. I've only had it for a couple days, and it's already kind of taking a key role in my live set. So I don't really have time to get into that too much. So I didn't do any sampling into it. All the samples that I have in it now are samples that I loaded in, that were samples that I had from before, that I had made on the rhythm, and or in productions or things like that. So let's see. I think I need to start making templates for my Oxy one. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the way. If you save things as songs or patterns, you can or save something as a pattern that will be or sorry as a project. I knew I was getting the word wrong. If you save it as a project, projects can be basically the same as a template, just like it is in the Octatrack. So like EasyBot's performance template is just a project that you open up and then you use that project as it is. And you can do the same in the Oxy, which is cool. The another thing that will be cool too with the Digitac 2, if you end up getting one of those or if you have one already, is the ability to save MIDI settings and so MIDI CC settings, and you can save those. Well, first of all, you have 16 CCs that you can send now instead of 8, and you can rename them so it's not just like value 1, value 2, value 3, but you can rename them with like 5 characters. So you can put like filter cutoff or resonance or whatever you want to put so you know what it is, and then you can save that with the name of whatever synth it is. So then if you know, let's say you've got a whatever synth, a subsequent 37. Every time you plug in the subsequent 37, you can load up that preset on that track as if it was a sound. And it basically loads your hardware like if it was a VST that you were loading in there, and you've already got control over everything that's labeled. So it's a super handy thing. I hope that comes to the other machines, and I think it probably will. It feels like something that could be done as a firmware. So yeah, it was cool. And the ability to do MIDI learn makes that all much, much easier too. Let's see here. 1 or 2 depends how I'm feeling. So yeah, Kinga either plays with 1 or 2 rhythms. I've seen some of their videos, and it's cool. It's definitely something that I had thought about because I have a Rhythm Mark 1 and a Rhythm Mark 2, and I had thought about at one point playing with the 2 of those, and I didn't need it, so it just felt like a lot of kit to bring when I didn't need it. But I could definitely see the value in it for sure. I can see why they do that. Just the size where it's slightly too big to fit into 2 hands. Like, yeah, totally agree with you. Just saying hi, need to go make dinner. Hi, knob to loop. Thank you. Thank you for saying hi. Enjoy your dinner. Let's see here. Hello, everybody. Is that Kit? Yes, Kit. I was wondering too if you get asked to perform much just based on your YouTube channel. Yeah, I mean, definitely. And that's something, thank you for bringing that. That's a great segue into something that I want to talk about today, because the whole point of this is really, this video is to talk about the kind of a bit more of the behind the scenes stuff of playing shows. And I get asked all the time, how do you get gigs? How do you know, where does that come from? And it's, as with almost anything else in the world today, it comes from networking. It comes from who you know, and it's that expression. It's not what you know, it's who you know. It's what you know and who you know. So if you are, it's not enough, and I don't think it ever has been. So for any old school, even DJs or whatever, they're like, well, back in my day, if you were good, you know, it's never been that way. It's always been about promotion, and it's always been about networking. And there are, fortunately for a lot of us in this world today, there are a lot of free or low cost ways to promote yourself that didn't ever exist in the past. And things were really gate kept by record labels and managers and booking agents and things like that in the past. They still are to a certain extent, but there's a lot of free access now. So the biggest way, the first and foremost way in order to get gigs, in order to really get booked, is to build up an audience. Because as with anything, performances, for the most part, unless it's like a club that gets together to jam, or things like that. But if it's in a venue, if it's in a club, if it's on stage somewhere, ultimately it's a business. They have to make money. So what they need is somebody who can do 2 things, and you can't have one or the other. You need 2 things. You need to have somebody who can deliver the music and make a good time when people show up for the event, and you need somebody who can get people to show up to the event, particularly people who wouldn't normally come to that event. Now, there's a role that a promoter plays in that 100%, and that's really their role, but they need to they need help basically. So they need somebody who can bring somebody in, which is why you see a lot of artists that have, a track that does really well. That will be a lot easier for them to get a gig because that's acted as marketing for them. That track and that track charting somewhere acted as marketing for them. And it allows the promoter to look at that and say, okay, well, they have a certain following, which means that when it comes time for me to sell these tickets that I need to sell in order to make a buck on this thing, they will help with that. Unfortunately, there's some bad promoters out there that just kind of make the artists do everything. I think there's a lot of bad promoters out there that do shady things and lazy things. One of my least favorite in the DJ world, which I have seen as well in the live performance world, is put a whole bunch of people on the lineup with really short sets, or 10 back-to-backs. So you have 20 different mini promoters that are out there promoting to their following. And so for me, that's kind of a lazy way to fill a night, and it kind of shortchanges what the audience gets out of it. Because a big part of what we do, whether it's live performance or DJing, a big part of what we do is kind of take people on a journey musically and show them things and take them to places and evoke emotions and things like that. And if they say, yeah, your set's 30 minutes long, it's harder to do that. And the audience isn't getting the most out of it. They're getting this quick condensed version of quick rush through everything that you could do so you can show them what you do, and then that's it. And so that was one thing that wasn't always the case. Promoters didn't always do that. It used to be a lot more about let's give DJs 2-hour long, 4-hour long, sometimes 8-hour long sets to take somebody on a real journey, play different genres of music and have an ebb and flow of the night and things like that, where there's a lot less of that now. So anyway, getting back onto the topic of how you get that, they need to look at what you do and have some gauge that you will be able to attract some people, and not just be one of those two things, which is a really good performer that can do something good on the night. But they want you to also be somebody who can help them attract a crowd to a thing that will pay, so that they can make money, so the venue makes money, so that they can pay you and all that kind of stuff. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do that. And fortunately, there's a lot of inexpensive or free ways to do that just take extra work. And unfortunately, there are a lot of expensive but really easy ways to do that don't take so much work, but they take a lot of money. So you either have to have time to do it and effort, or money, in order to kind of do that kind of promoting. So the free way of that is things like YouTube. And it's been great for me to kind of get, there's people on here, and again, I'll ask this again because a lot of you weren't on at the beginning. Please put in the chat where you're from, and because this is a perfect example of why that's important. So when I go on this trip, when I'm going to Europe right now, I'm going to play, I'm going to Superbooth in Berlin. I'm going to play some demos there. I'm doing some demos for Oxy, for Bux, the people that do like the Patch and Tweak book. I'm playing a DJ set in Berlin while I'm there. And then I'm going to be traveling to Brussels, and I'm playing playing a live set in Brussels. And then I'm traveling to Seattle, and I'm playing another live show in Seattle, and then I'll be coming back home. Now, when you think about those gigs, so Superbooth was me going to Superbooth and getting to know people and getting to know the people from Oxy, from Bux and things like that, to be able to, I got some bookings last year from that. They wanted to rebook me again this year because of that. The DJ set that I'm playing for Refuge Worldwide, is it's going to be online radio, but it'll be on their radio station, internet radio, and it will also be it's being recorded from a bar in Berlin, so it'll be both live and online. And I got that because some people that I know that I've played with in other places before were approached by that bar to put together a night, and they asked me to join in on that night. Then the show that I'm doing in Brussels, somebody who follows me on social media, when I put out there, or follows me on YouTube actually, when I put out there that I had some open dates, they went to a local venue and said, hey, this guy's going to be in town. It's an opportunity for you to have him come play and not have to pay for a flight coming all the way from the US and things like that. So they were able to connect me with the manager and the promoter for this place to be able to put together that show. The show in Seattle is I would say it's a direct result of YouTube, because it's the Desert Hearts event, and there's a live stage being hosted by Modbang, which most of you know is EasyBot's company. And I met Matthew through YouTube, through us both doing our YouTube channels, and then we met at the NAMM show, and then so we played a show together there. So getting to know people. Then when he was putting together this thing, and he was approached by the promoter in Seattle, and they said, hey, you should do a whole live hardware room. Do you have people who could do that? And he said, yep. And he called me up and said, hey, would you like to come out and do this event? So again, if you look at this, it's all about networking and getting to know people, and then everybody helping each other out. So like I've had people come and play here in Denver because there have been shows that were being put on, and they approached me and said, hey, do you know anybody who'd be interested? So I'm going to reach out to people that I know who are interested and who I think would be good quality acts for those things. So, Travarsi came out here and played. Alex is here already. And so when Alex puts together shows, he'll call me or he'll call Travarsi or somebody like that. So we will all kind of help each other out. And it's really important for those of us who are doing this, not with $1 million of backing, to be able to help each other out, because that's the free or low cost way to do it. But it does take a lot more time, and it does take a lot more effort to work with people and to be flexible and to be helpful and to not be a prima donna that it's like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I can't play that set because I'm too cool for that. It's like, you know what, if they need a hand, help them out. And then when you need a hand, they'll help you out. So it's like it's everybody helps each other, everybody gets farther. And when people start, competing with each other, then nobody goes anywhere. You're constantly tripping each other up, and it just isn't cool. So again, that for me is the best way to get gigs. I would say the second best way to get gigs is through production. And that's something that you'll see a lot in the DJ world, but also in the live hardware world. And it's not about being a good producer any more than it's about being a good performer, whether it's DJ or live performer. What it is about is it's about what happens with that production. I've been producing for 25 years-ish. I think my first releases were probably about 20 years ago. And I realized a long time ago that I would never make a living off of producing music. There are very, very few people who do. This tiny little micro fraction of the industry actually make money producing songs and putting them out. There are more people that are making money selling sample packs or preset packs or doing, a jingle for a commercial that are making money from producing songs and putting them out. It's all over the news. Everybody hears about what Spotify does. And I saw somebody say that it would take 750 streams of a song for an artist to buy a coffee. So just to give you an example of what that is. So yes, Bandcamp is cool and you can get money directly to you that way, but Bandcamp it's really hard for people to find you there through that sea of all of those people that are trying to be found as well. So then it comes down again to promotion and marketing. You have to have a following that you can point to your Bandcamp. So where do you create that following? Is it on social media? Is it on, is it through production? And so a great way to do production, and I'll give you a little, you can watch this and I'll give you permission to cringe horribly when you watch this. But my very first video on this channel was how to chart on Beatport. And it talked a lot about charting on Beatport and using that as a promotional tool to do other things. So it's basically because you'll never make any real money off of it unless you're one of that, 1/100th of 1% of artists who does actually make a living off of, or a good living off of their music. Where you can make money off of producing is if you put out things instead of on Bandcamp where it's hard for people to find you, but you do make a few extra bucks. If you were to put it out on things like Beatport, where promoters who are booking artists to play shows will go to Beatport and look at the chart and say, who's charting? If they're charting, it means they're selling to a certain volume of people, even though they're not making any real money off of it. They're selling to a certain volume of people and they have global reach because Beatport is a global thing. And the same goes for iTunes and things like that. But more so for Beatport because it's more focused on club music and dance music. So if a promoter was to go on there and say, oh, okay, you have a number one, a top 5, whatever track in this genre of music that is a party, or that is the genre of music that I'm booking a party for, I'll look on this and go, wow, I haven't heard of you, which means you're probably not going to be outrageously expensive for my event, but you've got a song that's charting, which means you've got enough of a following that enough people bought your track that it charted, because it charts based on the number of sales that you have. So you've got enough of those that you were actually able to break through on that side. So that tells me as a promoter, you can probably attract enough of a crowd that you will help me out in filling the space. So that's a way that music production can really help you get gigs, because it helps, just like a YouTube channel or just like social media or whatever, it can help you with your reach and it can help you start to build a following. It can help people know who you are in other cities other than yours. So when people in those cities are looking at booking shows, it's a way for them to find you, because otherwise they have no way to find you. If you're sitting in your room being the best ever bedroom producer, no one will ever find you ever. You have to promote beyond that to at least tell people that you're there. I use this analogy with my day job. I'm a consultant for restaurants, and I always tell my clients, like, if you, when we're talking about marketing, I said, if tomorrow you decided that you've got this amazing restaurant, your food is super good, and tomorrow you decided that everything was going to be free for the whole day, no matter what, everything's free, how busy would you be? And inevitably they all say, oh, well, we'd be packed if we're, because we've got great food. So if we were giving it away for free, we'd be packed. And I always tell them, wrong. You would be empty because you didn't tell people it was free. You didn't tell people how good the food was. So you need to tell people what kind of a performer you are. You need to tell people what kind of a producer you are, so that you can book gigs performing or sell tracks producing or whatever. So it doesn't just happen by itself. So you need to get out there and promote. So first and foremost, you can promote through a network of people that you have. Secondly, producing, if those productions go somewhere where they will be seen, like Beatport or somewhere like that, then that can be a real help for you as well. And then I guess finally the last in my mind, kind of legit way in this whole kind of free version of promoting yourself. The last way to get gigs is to start throwing events yourself and start to build up those events yourself. When you look around at some of the bigger name artists that are out there, a lot of them got big by starting their own events. Then they would put them together. They would build a following. I hope you're seeing a theme here. They would start building events, which would build a following. And then once they have that following, then they can start bringing in other artists, which helps them network with artists in other cities. They can do what's called gig share or gig trading. So like I might throw an event in my city where, I pay an artist to come in and play that gig based on the event that I'm going to throw. And I think that they're going to help me draw for that event. And we work out something where they then book me and pay me to go play their show and their event in their city. And that only works out if you know what you're doing in the first place, because nobody's going to book you if you're not an okay enough artist that they feel like you're gonna make the party have fun. And it gives you a chance to open up to new crowds and to expand your following. So for those of you who are in Seattle, you'll know that this is the third time in 2 years that I've been out to Seattle to play. And it's the most I've been to a single city outside of my hometown to play. I've been to a lot of other cities, but usually only once a year. And so to go somewhere 3 times in like a year and a half is a lot. And it's because I was able to go out there, expand a network, get to know Matthew, get to know a bunch of you guys out there, so that he goes, yeah, the more people want to see you out here. So when I'm going to do this thing, I'd love to have you come play again. And because I enjoy doing it, so I want to go out there and do it as well. So it really is, it's all about getting your name out there by building a following. Yes, you should be good, but being good isn't enough. And it never has been enough. Now, that moves us into really quick, a little chat about how is the not free way to do this. And this used to be the only way. Before there was social media, before there was YouTube, before you could post your videos on whatever platform you're on, your only option in the old days, back in the old days of traveling bands, was you would put together however you could through a fan base, through a mailing list, through a promoter, through whoever. You would put together a little tour, and you would sleep in your van, and you would drive around, and you would play these crappy little gigs to build out your following. And then once your following got big enough, you might get seen at one of those gigs by either a manager or a record label. And what they would do is they would go to these little shows in these little dive bars, and they would try to discover people. Once they did, then you would get a record deal, and then they would put money into you by promoting you. They would be your social media when there wasn't social media. So they would get you airplay on radio. They would get you to chart on the Billboard Top 100. They would get you, on the Tonight Show or on whatever. So it would build out your following. And in exchange, you would record albums that they would then sell and take a big chunk of to get the money back that they invested in you in the first place. So that used to be the only way to do it. That is still a way to do it. There are artists that are, particularly in the DJ producer world, there are artists out there who today, some of the biggest artists in the world, I would say like John Summit, if you're familiar with him, he blew up over the last 2 years because he had a couple of songs that came out that people latched onto that got really popular really fast because he had built up his own little following, but he was still producing in his bedroom. He built up a following, he got a record deal, and they said, we're going to invest in you. So then what they do is they start bombarding the people who do Spotify playlists and radio play and getting your song on a TV show and doing this stuff. And all of a sudden you blow up and you become a trending song on TikTok, or you become whatever. But they do that through marketing and promotion, which is basically paying for advertising to advertise a particular person's music. And then that person gets bigger and bigger shows. They're selling out big arenas. They're commanding, 20, 30, 50, $100,000 fees for an individual show. But a lot of that came from they got discovered, and with him in particular, it was through his production, and through a lot of these artists, it's through their production as well. So it's a great way to shortcut the process if you can do it, but two things have to go right. You have to get discovered, which means you have to be really good at the beginning, and you have to put out music that somebody with money thinks is going to make them more money. And then the second part is you have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing to go down that road with them and play shows that they want you to play, put out music that they want you to put out, promote yourself the way they want to, dress the way they think you should, be seen with who you think, like, because they manicure your persona just like they always did. Like, I mean, watch the Elvis movie. Like in the 50s and 60s, that's what the Colonel was. The guy was his manager. He discovered people and then he molded them into something popular, and then they became some of the biggest artists in the world. Look at people like Quincy Jones with Michael Jackson. They were able to, the whole Motown Records thing, they were able to find these Motown artists and develop them into global superstars. And this wasn't those people just because they were the best. There were plenty of people, I'm quite confident, that were as good or better than these famous artists that but they either didn't get discovered or they didn't stick with it long enough to do it themselves the kind of free way or whatever. But it's really the only way to do it. So that's how you get gigs. Talking about it that way. So you can do it with money, which is shorter, and you have to compromise a bit, or you can do it on your own, which takes longer. But either way, the common thread is you have to build up a following. And that following is either through social media, through playing shows, through getting your music out however you can, throwing your own events, and also networking. But building a following is really the kind of key piece to all of that. So that was a long answer to a short question, but hope I haven't bored everybody to tears so far. Let's see what we've got here. Oh yeah, that was the question we had. Oklahoma, Liverpool, awesome. North Carolina, sweet. Seattle, hey James, you coming to the show? Melbourne, Australia. I was gonna ask you what time it is, but it's like, you gotta ask like, what time is it and what day is it? I lived in Australia for a year and a half, and that was the hardest thing when I was gonna like call home to the States, is I was like, wait a minute, what day is it? Am I calling them on like on Sunday afternoon, or is it Monday afternoon, or is it Saturday? I can't remember. So yeah, but anyway, thanks for tuning in from Melbourne. If you're from Melbourne, you're probably an Aussie Rules football fan. So post in here who your team is. I'm curious to hear, since they're kind of all in Melbourne, right? Like, aren't 3/4 of the Aussie Rules team in that one city? All right, let's see. Why do I live in the most boring place? Kit, where's that? Oklahoma. It's only as boring as you make it, man. You got to make it fun. You guys got all kinds of wide open spaces there. Let's see here. Refuge show is huge. Yeah, that's going to be really cool. I'm super excited for it. If you guys tune in, I would actually love for you guys to tune in, because I had this conversation with somebody the other day. I don't know if you guys follow me on Instagram. If you don't, please do, because obviously it helps to build your following when you got more people. But I posted something the other night where I was using my exact same live setup, and I was just kind of feeling like house music. So I just kind of started grooving around, improvising some house music instead of techno, which I've produced and performed house music for a long time as well. And I posted a video of it, and the amount of people that were like, what? Like, you do house music too? And it's like, yeah, like a lot of us do a lot of stuff. Like, we like a lot of music. Like, one of my favorite channels and one of my favorite YouTube artists and artists in general to listen to is Ura. And his music could not be possibly more different from the music that I make, but I love listening to his music. I think it's amazing, and he's crazy talented, and he makes some really, really beautiful, amazing music. So yeah. So but anyway, I was going to say, I hope you guys tune in to the Refuge Worldwide radio show. It will be on internet radio. It's from 4 to 8 on Sunday, this coming Sunday. So 4 to 8 Berlin time. So that'll be like early in the morning on Sunday in the States, kind of depending on where you are. Similar times, 4 to 8 if you're in Europe in different places. Melbourne, Australia, I'm not even sure what day it's going to be on, but you'll be able to tune in as well. But yeah, so it's I'm going to be playing a DJ set first of all, and not a live set, and it's going to be kind of deep house, tribal house, that kind of stuff. So it will be a very different sound. So I would love the people who follow me on this stuff for this kind of stuff would tune into that, because it's cool. It's going to be a lot of fun. Something else I'm very passionate about, another style of music that I really love. And so it will be fun to play that show. Shout out EasyBot. Yeah, he was just texting me. I should text him back actually. Hi there. When and where exactly can I see you performing this weekend in Berlin and at Superbooth? Okay, so here's the shows that they're coming up. I actually just posted this online, so you can go online and see this too. Actually, the Superbooth ones I didn't post any times because they're a little bit vague. So Thursday and Saturday at Superbooth, I will be doing demos and chats about the Oxy gear at the Oxy booth. And those don't have set times yet. They're being a little vague about it, so we'll figure out exactly when those are, which days, because there's a couple people that are playing, so we want to make sure we arrange it properly. On the Friday is when I'm doing the one at the Buick's booth, and that is at 1:30 in the afternoon, and it's at their booth, and that'll be like a 20-minute set, and then like a 15-20-minute chat about improvised performance and Q&A, and I'll hang out there for a while afterwards, so if you want to ask any questions, please feel free to. Then the Refuge Refuge Worldwide show is going to be at a bar in Berlin called Una, and that will be Sunday from 4 to 8 p.m. It's kind of a sunset thing, so definitely come for that. And then if you're anywhere near Brussels, I will be, after Superbooth, I'm going to Brussels, and I'll be playing on the 24th in Brussels at a place called Dali's, and which is right near the kind of central plaza in the center of the city of Brussels. So definitely come check that out at Dali's Bar if you're in that area, or if you can get there easily by train, come check it out for sure. And besides that, at Superbooth, I'll also be at the YouTuber meetup, which should be a lot of fun. That's going to be on Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m. And that's going to basically be everybody. I mean, it's Bo Beats is the one who puts it on and kind of organizes everybody. But I've already been talking to a bunch of my friends, and I know they're all going to be there. So it'll be Bo will be there, and Synth and Jorb and Dave Mack and Nick Bat and Mylar Melodies and Ihor and Travarsi and a whole bunch more. So anybody who's a synth YouTuber who is at Superbooth will be at that meetup. So it's a lot of fun. It was cool last year. We did it as well. And it was a great opportunity to kind of meet people as humans and not just like their handle in the chat and whatever. So it's nice to actually meet people in person and get to see people as a human being. So, yeah, let's see here. Basement State show was fire. It was fun. I just wish more people had stayed. I know it was a weekday and it was kind of a bummer, but I wish more people had stayed later on in the night and kind of gotten to see the whole thing. But It was tons of fun to play. I love the venue, and everybody was super nice, and it was really cool. It was a great show. So I had a great time, and I'm looking forward to this time. New venue in Seattle this time, playing at Monkey Loft, which is supposed to be pretty cool. So I'm very excited about that. Let's see here, just geeking out on some Circo Live. Yeah, that's it. We're geeking out. Special edition D-Tag Syntact above your Percons. Yes, it is. They're actually both for sale. So, because I have a regular Syntact and I just got the D-Tag too. So they're both for sale. So if you know anybody that wants one that's in the Denver area, send them my way. But yeah, this area over here, they're the two kind of machines that are, more like synthy type machines that are there. And then everything else is very percussive or semi-modular or modular. That's where I have my modular case. That's my modules that aren't in my travel case end up over there. And then, 2600. And then there's a Moog Matriarch. I don't know if you can see that there. So, yeah, so that's the kind of semi-modular section of the room, and then the more synthy stuff is over on this side. But yes, that's what that is up there. Okay. Like to chase my first gig, but it's also a bit of fear of uncertainty. Thoughts on how to combat that? Fear of the actual performance itself, or of getting out there and kind of promoting yourself and committing to a gig, because those are a couple of different things that can provide some different fears. If it's the gig thing, just get out there. I mean, the worst thing somebody can do is just say no. So just get out there and ask and try to get those connections. As far as the uncertainty when you perform, just like with anything else, it comes down to practice. It comes down to getting to know your equipment. I get asked a lot because I improvise when I perform, and a lot of other people will pre-prepare tracks and build a set that they then play. They say, like, isn't it scary to improvise? And for me, I always tell them that it's scarier for me to pre-prepare something, because if one thing goes wrong in that, it throws you totally off the rails. Where I guess for me, I'm just off the rails since the start. So I'm doing that improvisation that you would do if something went wrong, except it's planned. I go in knowing I'm going to improvise. But I will tell you, and I've shared this before, but there's like 10 or 15 minutes before I play a live set each time that I get really super nervous, and I get this kind of pit in my stomach, and I have this voice in my head that is like, you are such a fool. Why didn't you prepare? Like, why didn't you prepare stuff and then just play it? And it's like, you're an idiot. You should have done this. Why do you stress yourself out like this? And so I have this stressful moment of doubt. And then as soon as I start playing and start improvising, and it's so much fun and so thrilling, then that clears that out of my head, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is why I do it this way. Because if I was just playing something pre-recorded and kind of hitting play and then tweaking a filter, that wouldn't be as exciting for me. That for me feels too much like DJing. And I started down the live road because I had been a DJ for over 30 years and I was trying to get away from being a DJ. So that feels too much like DJing for me. And with nothing against it. Like, I'm not down on anybody who performs that way. I think the important thing is what comes out of the speakers and the vibe you give the crowd. So if you do that by DJing totally pre-recorded somebody else's music, and you push a button and it plays and people have an amazing time because of the song you chose to play, that's amazing. That's a great skill, and it's something that I've been part of for a long time. If you want to DJ and have a drum machine that kind of adds little bits of things, if you want to have a few things with some stems, if you want to have a few things loaded up, maybe you've got Ableton with some whole tracks in it, and you've got some live stuff that you want to play and kind of alternate between, all that's cool. Do it however you want to. But just know that once, if you really enjoy the act of making music with your machines, however you do it, that nervousness will go away once you start playing. Like once you get going, that nervousness turns into excitement, turns into nervous energy, and it's fun. But but I do always have that moment of doubt right before I go on, because I could just as easily prepare things and then not have to stress about it, but then I would be stressed that something would go wrong and a sequencer would get out of whack, or I would miss a cue, or a program change wouldn't work, or whatever. There would be something. There always is something. So, yeah. All right. Let's see here. What's next? Netherlands. Awesome. I will be there when I go to Brussels. I'm planning to go to Rotterdam, at least for the day, and potentially to Amsterdam as well. It just kind of depends on the time that I have. Hey from Paris. Bonjour. Glad to have you. Bienvenue. Let's see here. Going to Superbooth 2. Awesome. I will see you there. Come up and introduce yourself. Keep in mind, when we're at Superbooth, if you're there in person, and I'm there in person, keep in mind you've seen me. You've seen me on these videos. you know my face, you know who I am. I have no idea who you are, because you're a little icon with the name, and a lot of times it's not even a real name, it's just some made up thing. So I won't know who you are. So some of the best meetings I've had is when people come up and say, hey, I just want to introduce myself. I'm so-and-so from the live chat. I'll be like, oh, now I can connect those two things and I know who those people are. So definitely introduce yourself like that, because I have no idea who anybody is until I've met them before. And you already have seen my face, so you know who you're coming up to talk to. So do that. Let's see. It's 8 a.m. Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning, and yes, I don't follow. Oh, sorry. You're the one that's in Melbourne. So right now it's 8 a.m. Tuesday morning. Okay. Well, here in Denver it is 4 p.m. on Monday. Yes, you don't follow sports ball, but Collingwood Magpies is a family team. Okay, cool. The year that I was there, Collingwood actually won the championship, and a girl who worked in the resort where I was, her father was on the Collingwood board, so she knew that I collected sports memorabilia, so she got me a jersey from Collingwood, the black and white striped jersey that was signed by the whole team. So I still have that in my jersey collection. The other thing I had to get when I was there, and I know this is rugby and not Aussie rules football, but I had to get a Brisbane Broncos hat, because my father, who has since passed away, but at that time he was a big Denver Broncos fan. So I brought him a Brisbane Broncos hat, because the logo was almost the same, but with totally different colors. So he thought it was really cool to have that. Let's see here. Shout out to Paris. Yes, one of my favorite cities, and a city I've spent a ton of time in. I worked for a French company for 11 years, and our company was based there, and I used to go there for meetings all the time, and I love it. Still one of my favorite places in the whole world. Hey, what's up, Vincent? Good to see you on here. Kinga, always at least a bit stressed before playing. It gets better when you play more, though. Yeah, it's just like with anything. The more you practice, there's two pieces to that, I think, particularly with live performance, whether it's electronic or even playing a guitar in front of people or whatever. There's two parts. The more you do it in front of people, the more you get used to doing it in front of people, and so you're like, oh, okay, that's not so weird anymore. I get that. And the other thing is, the more you play and practice, the better you know your gear, so the less you're worried that something's going to happen that you don't know how to fix. Because like right now, I can't tell you how many times I have been playing along with my modular and I've nudged the tuning. And so to know how to get it back in tune, once I know how to get it back in tune, then I'm not stressed about nudging it out of tune anymore. And it's the same with anything else. It's like the more you get to know your equipment, the more you get to know your instrument, whether your instrument is a guitar or a live rig of hardware, the more you get to know your instrument, the more comfortable you're going to be. So definitely. It does give life that thrill. You're right, Kinga. And that's why when I play live, that's why I improvise. Well, it's one of the reasons. There's a bunch of reasons why I play improvised and not produced. But one of those is because I like the thrill of it. It's fun. it's exciting. I came to live performance from DJing because DJing got boring. I wanted to be able to do fun things during my performance and not just the things that I was doing there, which was basically song selection and effects and transitioning. And I got tired of that. So I wanted to do more, and I wanted to combine production and performance into one thing. So that's why I do the live thing. Let's see. Vincent, over practice leads to crazy anxiety. Yes, I agree, especially if you're practicing the same thing. So if you have a live set that is your pre-done live set and you over practice that, that will stress you out because you're going to start to nitpick every little thing. Another great thing about improvising is that there's no time to nitpick. I'll get done with a show and I have no idea even what I played. Like I don't even remember because you're so focused in the moment that you don't think back to it. So yeah, I have to kind of rely on other people. Like I'll come off and I'll be like, did that suck or was that okay? And people will let me know. But yeah, it's definitely hard. Let's see. Hello. 10 p.m. in Reykjavik. Were you the one who was on from Reykjavik the other day? That's very cool. Iceland is a very cool spot that I would love to go spend some time in. What do you think the future holds for the Analog Rhythm series? More updates or Mark III? I think the short term is more updates, but I also don't think they're going to come they're not going to come right away. If you guys have kind of followed along with what Electron does, and a lot of companies, but Electron in particular, because they have a lot of pieces of gear that are not going anywhere. So like they're not going to take them out of circulation. So what they tend to do is they rotate through updates. So they don't kind of update everything all at once because they're working on specific things for each machine. And so they'll rotate through updates just like they rotate through upgrades to, a Mark II, a Mark III, whatever of gear. And I would say that's everything but the Octatrack. I think the Octatrack is the only piece of gear that they make that's still produced and that is still sold new that they're not actively upgrading. It is what it is. And I think that the next thing that we see in Octatrack world is going to be, I hate to say an Octatrack Mark III because I don't think it will be. It's going to be on a totally new platform, I think, because they're not going to rewrite code on a platform that they're not using anymore when they're using the same software platform across everything else of all the modern machines now. So it will be something, the next iteration of whatever becomes or whatever takes over that spot in the line of gear that Electron makes will be something that takes the place of the Octatrack. Call it a Mark III if you want to, but it's probably going to be something totally new that will be the thing that does sampling, sample chopping, sample mangling, live looping, multi-tracks in, multi-tracks out, the crossfading, scenes, effects, all of those things that none of the other machines do. It will be something that does those, but I think it'll be based off of the new platform. That's just my hunch. But from a business perspective, it doesn't make any sense for them to have a whole other team of people writing code for a whole other machine and designing a whole other machine, that it's the only thing in that platform anymore, when now they have 4 or 5 other things that are all working off of the same platform in different ways. So yeah, I don't think that is. But as far as the Analog Rhythm, I think that it just got a huge update. That was the last update that came out before the Digitac 2, the last Electron kind of update that got put out there. So it will be a while because now they've done the Digitac 2. I think next will be some software updates, probably a Syntac software update because that hasn't really got one in a little while, and then I think that my hunch again, and I have absolutely no insider knowledge, which you guys will believe me on since you saw how long it took me to get a Digitac 2. I'm not getting anything inside from those guys. The next thing I think we'll see will be a Digitone Mark II, because that's kind of due. It came out after the Digitac, so if you kind of go in that rotation, it would be the next thing. I would say sometime within the next year. Could be sooner rather than later, but I think that it will most likely be about this time next year. I think that'll be their pre-Superbooth release for next year. And then, of course, if you follow along the rumors, if you're a super nerd for Electron stuff like I am, they applied for a trademark for a new name that's called Tonewerk. And that was kind of how the syntax got leaked at first, was they applied for the trademark for the name syntax, and then everybody was trying to figure out what it was going to be. And it ended up being similar to what some of us thought it was going to be, and then very different to what others thought. And I think that the Tonewerk, I think, is going to be something new that they do. I have some hunches myself about what it will be, but we'll see. But I think the next thing that we'll probably see new from them would be a Digitone Mark II, probably relatively sooner than later. Let's see here. Where are we at? Have a good one. Bedtime. Good night, unknown artist. Okay, perfect. You are the one from Reykjavik. Well, welcome back from Reykjavik. Our Iceland being well represented. Yeah, go check out Kinga stuff. The few things that they have posted up there are pretty solid. I'm a fan, so definitely go check it out. Octatrack with Overbridge. I will tell you flat out, the Octatrack will never get Overbridge. It will never happen. Again, it will be a new machine that replaces the Octatrack, and they may call it the Octatrack Mark III, but I doubt it. I think they'll give it a new name. It will replace the Octatrack, and it will have Overbridge, because this new platform is what allows them to do Overbridge. And but I think it will have the capabilities of what the Octatrack does with the looping and sampling, and the way the effects work and the scenes and things like that. They don't really need to do the parts thing anymore, because now they already have parts, by basically having, different projects. So I think they don't really necessarily need that anymore, so they can simplify that part of it, which very few people understand how parts work anyway. So they don't need to keep going with that one. So Overbridge enabled mixer with Overbridge host. Yeah, we were talking about that online not too long ago, Kinga. That's my hunch that what I think Tonewerk is going to be. Now, if you look it up and it means tone work, the logic to me is that it's a mixer, which I think is dramatically missing from the world of live performance, which is why so many people use the Octatrack as a performance mixer. Your options are little Eurorack mixers or big 40-pound DJ mixers that nobody can travel with. So there's a giant hole in the market that nobody is filling, and anybody I know of that's working on a mixer is either working on a Eurorack mixer or they're working on another big 40-pound, you've got to haul it around with a truck sized mixer. So if Electron were to come up with a mixer that was like the size of an Octatrack, or even like an Analog Rhythm Mark II, like even that size, and it had multiple ins, multiple outs, so you could have sends and returns. It allowed you to have programmable scenes. You could put bits and pieces of the analog heat in it, so you could have the bass mono, the compressor, and saturation, so you could get kind of a light version of a mastering chain for an outgoing signal. And if you had incoming multiple channels of incoming. It would work with any gear, and Electron or otherwise. And then if they came up with a way to do, using the overbridge technology to do audio MIDI via USB from the Electron devices, it would give the Electron devices a leg up with the gear while still allowing it to work with everything else. That's what I think they should make, but I don't have their ear, so we'll see. But that's my hunch, but I could be wrong. Maybe the Toneberg is the Octatrack Mark III. Who knows? We'll see at some point. We'll see. I'll try and beat it out of them when I'm at Superbooth. Let's see. Yeah, I do think that that's the way they're going to go. Let's call it Digitrack. There you go. USB ins for other electronic. Yes, that would be huge. Right now they have like 3 boxes and nothing to mix them with. Totally agree with you. Except the Octatrack. I mean, that's the thing. I played a show about a year ago with live artist named Tunnel from Minneapolis, with Travarsi and Alex 106, and myself and Lady Starlight. And it was funny because we had all of our gigs set up, or all of our gear set up down this long table at the gig. If you go on my Instagram, there's actually like I took a video of all the gear at Soundcheck. And the funny thing was, on that stage, everybody's gear was different. We all had different setups, and some had modular, some had synths, some had Electron boxes, some had outboard sequencers, some had samplers, some had whatever. We all had different gear, but there was an Octatrack in every single setup. And what that tells me, and for the most part, people were using it as some sort of a mixer in combination with the sampling capabilities. So what that tells me is that there's a need for a mixer. So I think that somebody needs to make one. If you're a mixer maker watching this, make a mixer, please. We all need one. Make one that is no bigger than an Analog Rhythm Mark II, because that can still be put into hand luggage and still be carried on. And make sure that it doesn't have a bunch of stupid things that it doesn't need, and it has the things that would actually be functional to a performing live artist, live hardware performing artist. Right, let's see. It would be a game changer, you're totally right. What Easy About Octatrack template do you use, and how does it work with just the Syntactis drums and melody? So if you look, I'll take my deck saver off here. If you look, I have one tape on top here that has some empty spots. And if I lift this up, you can see I've got another tape on the front. The one on the front is, I want to say it's like 2 versions ago of the template. Every time he comes out with a new one, it's when I'm just about to play a show. And so the last thing I want to do is change up such a key part of my setup right before I go into a show. So then I don't update to the newest one, and then I'll go like weeks afterwards and be like, oh yeah, I missed one. I should really update that now. And so I end up not doing it. So, and he's always constantly telling me like, hey, you should upgrade. You should try this new one. You're going to love this. You're going to love this. And I'm like, yeah, but I keep forgetting to. And then the reason why I have the tape on top with the blank spaces is I was actually, before I got the Digitac 2, I was setting this up because I didn't know the Digitac 2 was coming. I was starting to set this up to be able to use 4 tracks of time stretch samples in the Octatrack and still keep the effects that I wanted. And I couldn't keep, even his template that allows sampling only has 2 tracks because he needs 3 on each path to layer the effects the way that he does in there, especially for a bunch of the loopers. And I wasn't really using the loopers, so I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna make my own version that keeps the kind of DJ style performance effects that I like, but allows me 4 slots that I could do for sampling. So I did that. And so that was kind of what I was using until then the Digitac 2 came out, and I got it a couple days ago. So that's why I have both tapes on here, so I can kind of use whichever one I feel like at the moment. But yeah, even so, I'm not using the newest one. I should be. Now that I have this one, I can actually upgrade, because if it ends up I don't like something or can't find something, or if it messes up something for me, I can always go to this one that I've been working on, or to an older version as well. I guess I could have always done that. It was just being lazy, I guess. But yeah. Let's see. Tu as présentement qui vont nous montrer un aperçu de Digital MK2 à la Superbooth. Ha, I wish. I wish I was the one that was going to be showing you the MK2 of the Digital at Superbooth. They could. I mean, it's possible, but I really, really, really doubt that they would put out the Digitone 2 at Superbooth this year because they just put out the Digitac 2. And just from a business standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, you want to give your one product a chance to sell and to get people to buy it and to get them to make the money or save up the money to get it. And if you put out two products too close to each other, they're going to choose one or the other. Where if you give them space in between, they'll get one and then they'll save up and they'll get the other. So as a business, you sell both. So I would be surprised from a business perspective if they put out the Digitone 2 anytime soon. Even if they were ready for it, I would be surprised because just from a business perspective, it makes no sense at all. But if you saw my video on the Analog Heat Plus effects, for me, I think that was a business mistake as well. I think that should have been an Analog Heat Mark III in one box, and it should have been a multi-effects processor with the ability to move around the blocks into different pedal chains like they have in there. And that should have been a second machine, and I would have bought both of them. And they would have made more money off of me by doing it that way. But instead they put them together and now you have to choose how you use it because the effects aren't end of chain performance effects. So if you're going to use the heat part of it as your end of chain, you can't use the effects there. And if you're going to use the effects as sound shaping effects on a synth, then you're not going to use the end of chain capability. So I personally think that they should have had it be two machines and they could have made a lot more money off of me if they did, but they didn't. So they did. So that said, I still don't think they would put out the Digitone Mark II in that close to when the Digitact Mark II came out, or Digitact 2, I guess, came out. Tunnel is amazing. Yes, he is. And he's a super nice guy too. Let's see. Do you think any potential mixer would have the performance capability of EasyBot's templates? Well, I would kind of hope so because the big advantage and one of the main reasons why so many people use his templates is not just because the effects he came up with are so good. So if you baked those in, that would be it. It's the fact that I can take his template and I can modify it and make my own effects. Or I could learn how to do it like he did. I don't have that kind of time because it took him 100 years to learn how to do this, but you could learn how to do it yourself and make those effects yourself. So that's one of the big pluses with the Octatrack. So I do hope that if they were to do a mixer with effects, I would hope they would do it that way. And I do hope that whether or not they make a mixer, whatever replaces the Octatrack, whether it's an Octatrack Mark III or whatever, it won't be, but they might call it that. Whatever it is, has the ability to customize the effects because that really is a big thing. Let's see here. Yeah, they still got to fine tune the Digitac 2. I agree. There are some things that are not perfect in this. Hey, what's going on? There are tons of people that bought the Octatrack just for that template. Yeah. You'd be very smart to make it into a standalone device. I totally agree with you. And I think, again, it's, when you think about it from a business perspective, if you're starting a business or creating a product, one of the most important things that you need to identify is demand and lack of competition in any business. I don't care what business you're in. And so if there's demand for a live hardware performance mixer that is not a DJ mixer and that is not a modular mixer, if there's demand for it and there's nobody else doing it, that is a prime business opportunity for somebody. So I hope somebody does it because I want one. I mean, I would love, if Electron would do that, I would love it because I like the workflow. I like the way their machines are built. I like that stuff. So I would be all over that if they would come up with something for sure. I'm not afraid to admit that I have almost I think you meant to say almost no idea, almost no idea how to operate the Octatrack besides the template. Yeah, and we can talk about the Octatrack really quick for a second. I've had friends that have bought the Octatrack, and they'll call me up and say, "Hey, you have one of those. How do you use this thing? It's driving me crazy." And how many people have you seen in the forums, and maybe some of you are in the comments right now, how many people have you seen that have said, "Oh, I've had an Octatrack and I sold it," or "I've had an Octatrack 3 different times and I kept selling it because I kept getting so frustrated"? Well, a little tip here about the Octatrack is that it is a multi-tool. It is a Swiss Army knife, which here, I actually have a visual aid for this that I don't usually have. It is a Swiss Army knife. And if you have a Swiss Army knife that has a bottle opener and it has a screwdriver and it has scissors, you would be crazy to try to turn a screw, open a bottle, and cut something all at the same time. But if you close 2 of them, now you can turn a screw. Then you close it and open something else, and now you can do that. So think about the Octatrack the same way. It's a multi-tool, and if you try to use everything all at the same time, it doesn't function. You'll cut yourself. Like if you had a Swiss Army knife, it will drive you crazy. It will break your brain, and you'll never figure out how to use it. So take it in chunks. Learn how to do one thing at a time. Use the screwdriver. So maybe the screwdriver for you is the effects performance template that EasyBot made. Learn that, and then dig a little deeper into that and learn how they work, how to build those effects, how those scenes work, all of that stuff, how they divide up in the parts within that project. It's all that stuff you can learn from that template. Then say, okay, well, this also does looping. So that means I'm recording using recording buffers. Okay, cool. So maybe I'm gonna learn how to do that now. And I'm gonna take a few weeks and I'm gonna learn all there is to know about live looping and sampling and using the recording buffers and resampling and layering things and doing all that. Cool. Then maybe move on to the next thing. I'm gonna work on how to set it up just as a drum machine and do that. I'm going to really get into the sequencer and learn about, the probabilities and parameter locks and all that stuff. Then maybe you say, you know what? Now I'm going to work on sampling. I'm going to get into it as a sampler and a sample player and a sample chopper and a sample mangler and learn those things. So if you learn each thing one by one and you take plenty of time working on just one thing, the Octatrack is an amazing machine. If you try to drink from the fire hose by opening it all up like the Swiss Army knife and trying to make it do all those things at one time, it is so dysfunctional in that way that you'll think it's awful and you'll hate it and you won't ever want to use it again. So it's most of the time when I hear that somebody doesn't like the Octatrack, there are a few instances where it wasn't the right thing for them. Like they shouldn't have gotten it. They just got it because of whatever reason. But in a lot of instances, it may be exactly what they need, but they tried to do too much at once, and so it turned them off on the machine, and so they decided not to do it anymore and just got frustrated and gave up. And they went back to a machine that is simpler, that does far less things, but it does those individual things better than the Octatrack does those individual things, or in an easier way at least. So it gave them something that they could more easily work with. And so yeah, if you've got an Octatrack and you're only using the performance template, don't feel bad about that. That's cool. That's a start. Use it for that. But the good thing is that performance template is just a project. So when you are bored and sitting on the couch, open a new project and learn one of those new things. And then when you want to use it as a performance thing, go back to the performance one. Then open up a new project and work on something else. And you can save those projects. So you can have a sample mangling project and a performance template project and a drum machine project and an ambient project and a techno project, and you can do whatever you want. And so it has so much flexibility. That's why a lot of people call it a modular in a box, because it's kind of a software version of a modular synthesizer. You can mix and match things any way you want to make it into whatever you want it to be. So it's a great machine for that. So anyway, enough with my Octatrack commercial. This is not sponsored by Electron in the least. Let's see here. I'm not afraid to admit that I have almost no idea. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people don't use it outside of the template, which I don't at this point. I don't use it outside of the template because I'm not a sample guy. I have used it as a drum machine in the past. I have used it to sequence other things in the past, but I don't right now because I've got other things that do that better. But I've got nothing that acts as a performance mixer and effects processing unit better than what the Octatrack does. So that's why it has that space in my setup at this moment. Talked to Yamaha today, and the issues I'm having with controlling Logic with my DM3 mixer are because of firmware bugs. Would you switch DAWs to Cubase or add a DAW controller? I don't know. DAWs are, it's one of those things where there's all these like tribes of this one's better, this one's better, this one's better, this one's better. But the reality is the one that's the best is the one that you know the best, just like your gear. So if you know a DAW really well, it's a lot of brain damage to learn a whole other DAW. I mean, you can do it. It's just, you won't be as good or as fast. And then you might be even more frustrated than you were by the software bugs of the other things. So it all comes down to it. Do you love the mixer more than the DAW, or do you love the DAW more than the mixer, and replace the piece that you feel the best about replacing? For me, I know Ableton really well because I've used it since I think Ableton 5 or 4. It's been a long, long time. And prior to that, I used Fruity Loops before it was FL Studio. And that one I used since Fruity Loops 1, just so you know how long I've been doing that. But I switched to Ableton for a capability thing because at that time it was the most capable for sure. And now there's, FL Studio is great, Logic is great, Cubase is great, Reason's great, Bitwig is great. I mean, there's a ton of great DAWs out there. So whichever one connects with you the best, that you use, that you feel the most comfortable using, and that does things that you want it to do in the way you want it to do them, then that's the one you should use. So if you're not married to Logic, but you really love the mixer, okay, then change DAWs. I mean, that's fine. Logic is a fantastic DAW, so it really comes down to what you prefer. But DAWs with controllers, again, there's a million controllers for DAWs, so you can really customize that. If you love the DAW, you can customize any controller that you really like to that DAW. But if you really love the DM3 mixer, then you're probably gonna have to find something that it works better with. But me personally, from personal experience of using them, I personally clicked with Logic much more than Cubase, and I click with Ableton more than Logic. So, but that's me, and everybody's brain works differently and thinks in a different way. So whatever's your preferred way. Let's see. Bitwig is your main writing DAW. Yeah, so I mean, again, it's really whatever you prefer. Why were you, if Bitwig is your main writing DAW, why were you trying to make the mixer work with Logic? I guess I don't understand that. Why do you need Logic and Bitwig? So it should, in my mind, unless I'm totally missing something, it would be one or the other. So if you're using Bitwig and you really love that, does the Yamaha work with Bitwig? And if it does, just ditch Logic and go with Bitwig. Okay. Roland has MX1 for their universe, so I never understood why Electron would. So it's funny that Roland MX1, I use that as an example a lot of exactly what everybody wants done in typically awkward Roland style. Their workflow is super dysfunctional and really difficult and not super user-friendly, but they have amazing sounds, and I think they have great ideas too. Like, I think the MX1 was a great idea, but it really didn't play well with other machines other than their machines, which I guess there's a case for that, where you say like, yeah, we want to keep them in our ecosystem, but really they should have opened it up to everybody. Then they could have sold it to everybody, but they didn't. So it was this kind of like awkward, it kind of worked, but it didn't work for anybody. So then it just didn't work. So yeah, that's a great example. And Yeah, I think that if they would have kept going with that, well, I don't know, because they would have found a way to make it really difficult to use. So, not sure about that. Let's see, Merlin's Octatrack Guide. Help me wrap my head around it. Yes, the Merlin's Octatrack Guide is really, really, really good. Um, yeah, that's a great way to dig into the Octatrack. Also, obviously, like everybody does the same things when you get an Octatrack. You watch Cuckoo's video, you read the Merlin's Guide, you read the Electron Manual if you can get through it, and then everybody kind of ends up with EasyBot. And they go, okay, here's somebody who actually knows how to do it, who can explain it really clearly, like in human terms. So then if you're smart, you book some one-on-one calls with EasyBot and you get him to impart his Jedi ways of the Octatrack on you, which is, yeah, he's the shortcut. What am I most excited for at Superbooth? I guess that's the cop-out answer, but I'm the most excited to see people. The this thing that we do, whether it's making music, producing, YouTube, no matter what it is, we do a lot of these things alone, and locked in a room in our basement like I am right now. So it's nice to, I had a great time last year at Superbooth. A bunch of the synth YouTubers all stayed in the same hotel, and they invited me to come stay in that hotel with them, which was really cool. So we would hang out in the evening after Superbooth and have drinks and talk about what we saw during the day. And you're kind of with your people. You've got things that you can talk about. And even though you've never met before and you're from different countries, you're from all over the world, and you make different kinds of music or whatever, you all have this thing in common of this love of these machines that make music. And so it was really cool to hang out in the same hotel. We would have breakfast in the morning, and then we'd kind of go to Superbooth together. We'd all kind of go do our own things, and then we'd meet up at the end of the day and we would chat about what we saw. And so it was a lot of fun to hang out with, Bo and Liam Killen and Nick Bat was in our hotel, and Synth Dad and Jorb and Midlife Synthesist, and like the whole gang. And so it was really fun, and it's going to be similar this year. We're all staying in 2 hotels right next to each other, and I know that Miles Kundra is going to join us, and Ihor is going to join us, and Dave Meck, and a few others. So it's really fun because we all have the synth thing in common, and we also have the YouTube thing in common. So it's nice to talk to people who have a shared experience, and because there's nobody in my regular everyday life, that I talk to with my day job or whatever, could possibly, no one could care less about what I do. Like this is not their thing. So yeah, so that's what I'm looking forward to the most. But I don't think that was your answer or your question. I think your question was, what am I the most looking forward to as far as gear goes? And I think I'm probably looking forward to the things I don't know yet. I don't know if you guys saw, there were some new announcements today already, and a couple things that were teased, which got me very interested. There's the Polyan Tracker Pro that got announced today, which if you're a tracker person, that's super interesting. Was it Tracker Pro or Tracker Plus? I don't remember. But if you're a tracker person, that was really, really cool. Then Moog just announced that they will be there. They have a booth. Lisa Belladonna is going to be at the booth demoing something new. And we all saw, like after the Super Bowl, there was that whole thing about the new multi-timbral Moog synth that was being used during the Super Bowl halftime show, that I'm assuming that we're going to see that there, because it's been, it's kind of out, kind of, but without any real information. So this would be a good place for them to get the info out about that. But that wasn't what they announced. When they announced that Lisa Belladonna was going to be there, they said it was going to be the latest iteration of the mother platform. And it looked like, from the picture was from the back so that you couldn't see what it was, but it looked like in the form factor of like the Mother 32, DFAM, that group. So it looked like another machine that's going to be part of that group, but I could be wrong. But that is what it looked like from the little teaser that was out there. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to those things. You guys, Kinga, what was that synth that you posted about the other day? That was the modular company that's making a desktop synth. I have it written down on my thing, but I had forgotten it. Post that in here because that one also looked really interesting when I looked at it. A bunch of cool new modular stuff that's coming out. I'm very excited for. I got to see a few days ago when I did one of the modular synth meetup things here in Denver. I got to see the new version of the WMD performance mixer that they're also going to have at Superbooth, which is badass. There's a lot of people that have been making modular mixers lately. It's been kind of a fad. I think some YouTubers after NobCon even did the videos of like mixer wars or whatever. I think the WMD performance mixer is going to kill them all. It is so cool. I mean, already I mean, you can see already that's what I have right here. This is the WMD performance mixer, the original version of it. It's so widely used because it's such a great mixer. And I think that I think the same thing's going to happen again with this new one. The upgrades are amazing. They've taken this. It's kind of like with the Digitac 2. They took everything that this does and made it better. So I'm super excited for it. It's going to be really cool. So yes. But yeah, what else am I looking forward to? Oh, I definitely want to try the Torso S4. That seems very interesting to me. From what I've heard from a few people, including Ed, who was on this a little bit earlier, or no, it wasn't Ed, it was Thomas, who was on our group coaching call earlier, that was talking about how it's incomplete. And you can tell that they've got a lot of room to expand it, and it has kind of some limited capabilities. But for what it does, and in those limited capabilities, it seems very, very cool. I'm really excited to try it. I think it looks awesome. I don't think it looks like any other sampler that's out there. I think that the way that it manipulates the sound of the samples, and it can also manipulate incoming audio using those same engines, is very interesting to me. I definitely want to check that out. I would love to get my hands on one to use for a little while. So Torso, if you're watching, I would love one of those. But yeah, it seems very, very cool. So I'm definitely looking forward to that one for sure. All right, let's see what else here. Okay, let's see. Because I like Logic for linear mixing tape style work, and I'm impressed by the new AI features of the update released today. Okay. Yeah, I mean I would say if you like Logic, more switch to Logic. But I understand that Bitwig has some really cool features, particularly as it relates to CV if you're doing stuff with modular. But yeah, it's I would if it was me, but this is I mean, you can see it by what I do with my gear. If it was me, I would try to simplify my life and just do something easier. Okay, let's see here. Humans for the win. Yep, that's it. I'm there for the humans. I'm there to see my friends that I only get to see once a year. Twice a year if they go to NobCon. Is the Plugin Tracker Plus making you run on the Digitac 2? No, it's not. It's really funny because these companies, I really don't think, and I could be wrong, maybe I'm just naive, but I really don't think that these companies are like, oh, we're going to go after that machine. I think that they're like, hey, we have a cool idea of something we would like to use to make music, so let's do it. And if people are using a machine that's kind of like that, maybe they'll be interested in this one instead of, or in addition to, or whatever. But anytime something has a similar form factor or one tech spec that overlaps with another machine, all of a sudden the whole world goes, it's a whatever killer. Or it's whatever, like, and most of the time it has nothing to do with it. I watched a video the other day that was about the Chaos Replay and how everybody thought that it was the SP404 killer, and it's like, no, it's like not even, they have nothing to do with one another. Like, other than the fact that they're the same size and shape, people think if it comes in a box, it's the same as everything else. But those, one is an effects processor and the other one's a sampler. It's like they're totally different machines. One's a sampler that has some effects, and the other one's an effects processor that does some sampling, but they have totally different jobs. Kind of like all the different electron gear. Like every piece of electron gear has a different specialty that it does, and that's why they have so many different kinds of gear that they make. Let's see. Same. I wish I could talk to my friends about this hobby. Yeah, exactly. I'm the same way. Like when I talk to people at work, they're like, they look at me like I have three heads. So like, what do you do? Like, cool. I'm gonna go do my hobby. Awesome. You go do your hobby. Definitely a question. They just stare at me blankly. Yes, they do. Trackers and Electron are quite different workflow. Don't think devices need to go after others to be successful. Totally agree with you. But I will say, just for reference here, the Electron workflow is based on the tracker workflow. If you were to take a tracker and you were to lay it on its side, it's very similar to the Electrons. So you've got the ability to parameter lock things to every single step, which is the whole basis of how trackers work, is that each step you can have a different sound, a different tone, different effects, different, pitch, volume, LFOs. You can have different things per step that you lock to that step. And that's, the whole Electron workflow came out of the tracker workflow. So they're not that dissimilar, at least at their core, but workflow wise, yeah, they've totally gone a totally different direction now. It's kind of like when Apple split and they basically made Windows so that it was like this user-friendly interface. And it was like, we kind of started from the same world, but then now one of them works way more friendly than the other one does. But they both kind of start from the same place. All right, let's see here. Game Changer has a new plasma modular voice. Yeah, Travarsi has that. She was telling me it sounds awesome. Check out, I think she did a video on it, if I'm not wrong. Check it out. I know she's using it in her performance case right now. And yeah, it sounds very cool. It looks cool too. That plasma thing, I don't know if that's a gimmick or not, but it definitely sounds good. About time we see all these 16-track groove boxes. Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing. It's, tell that to Teenage Engineering, who still insists on making 4-track tape recorders in their stuff. But yeah, it all comes down to your workflow and what you want. I like the 16 tracks because what I was in effect doing before was 8 tracks of drums in a drum machine and 8 tracks of synth voices in a synth. Now I can do all 16 in one box and it saves me a box. So I like that for sure. And I also, a big thing that doesn't get, I think, talked about enough with the Digitact 2 and the Syntact is not only do they give you more tracks in both of those machines than anything they had in the past, but they gave you the flexibility to use those tracks for audio or MIDI. And that for me is a huge upgrade. If they would have kept it 8 tracks and had them flip between audio and MIDI, that's already an upgrade. But to go to 16 and have them all be audio or MIDI, that's pretty cool. It was a pretty big deal to just have that kind of flexibility. I think that all machines should do that. I mean, the Deluge did it for a long time, and it was a big differentiator for them. And I think that now that the Digitact and the Syntact both do that, I think that's a huge deal. See, look forward to updates on things from this year too, like Stylophone, DS2, audio, computers, Beat Buddy, etc. Moog stuff as well. Yeah, there's a lot of cool, there's always a lot of cool stuff. So like I said, I think I'm the most excited for the things that I don't even know I'm gonna see yet. One of the things that's so cool about Superbooth is that you go to get surprised. Like I saw so much gear last year that I didn't even know existed. And a lot of it hadn't come out yet. A lot of it still hasn't come out. But when you see these things, it's really, really cool. So that's part of like the coverage I'm going to be doing on this channel about Superbooth, is about the things that I see and kind of what's interesting and what strikes me as cool and that stuff, because there's just so much of it out there. Yeah. Let's see. I've noticed when I focus on one box of an analog 4, analog rhythm, digitone, Syntact, and I learn it, I can get some very nice tracks out of the Syntact. Yeah, it's always good to learn everything it's always better to learn deep than it is to learn wide. So deeper into one piece of gear instead of shallowly into a lot of pieces of gear. I mean, I guess you could do both if you have a lot of disposable income, but it's good to get into a certain piece of gear. And I saw, who was the interview with recently? Well, it doesn't matter. I know I've seen a bunch of them recently with whether it's Nadia Stravig or whether it's Blush Response or a few others, and they were talking about how even though they have a ton of gear, when they're going to sit down to write, they'll pick a couple pieces and say, I'm going to write today on this, this, and this, rather than, I've got 20 pieces of gear, but I'm only going to pick 3 to write with. And that allows me to focus and go deeply into those things and what those things do. And you end up coming up with some really cool stuff that way. And sometimes in trying to work around things that things don't do, you accidentally find those things that you love even more. I'm a big fan of randomness and generating things randomly to give you creative ideas. And I think that's a great way to do it, is to dive into those machines like that. What would you recommend for hardware box to sketch ideas out and then jam with minimal friction? MC707. Oof, man, it's funny you mentioned the MC707 and the MPC. I had both of those machines for that very reason, and I sold them both because I didn't get along with the workflow of either one of them for different reasons. But, well, one reason very much the same. They're both ridiculously menu divey. And part of that is because they try to do too much. It's kind of like what I was saying about the Octatrack. When you've got something that does so many things, it's going to be really complicated to use, and you'll have to dive through a ton of menus, which is why the Octatrack is very menu divey. It's why the MPC is very menu divey. It's why the MC707 is very menu divey, because they do a lot of things and they don't have a great interface for dealing with that. And it's one of the reasons why you find so much Electron stuff in my gear, is because I think they are very good at walking the line between functionality and ease of use. It does each piece does enough things that they're super powerful, but they don't try to boost up the spec so much that then it becomes a machine that you have to wrestle with, like you do with something like an MC707. So what would be my let's see, I'll give you a few examples of things that I would use to sketch with. The Deluge, if you have one, is an amazing sketch pad. It's battery powered, it's small, it's light, it has synths and sampling and the great sequencing and all kinds of stuff. And it's a great machine as a sketch pad. It also has the ability to flip tracks from audio to MIDI, so you can sketch in audio, then you can get back to your studio and you can plug into MIDI gear and you can send it out to bigger synths if you would like to, which is something that for me is very key for a sketch pad. So the Deluge, I would say, is a great one. I am a big fan of using the Oxy One because even though it's a sequencer and it's not an all-in-one box, it works with things that you have with you all the time, like your phone. So I will connect the Oxy One. So like when I'm on a plane traveling for work, I'll connect the Oxy One to a soft synth app in my phone, or to AUM with multiple apps if I want to have it act more like a groove box. And you can do that battery powered with no cables because it's got Bluetooth MIDI as well. So I will sketch things on the Oxy One using the sound sources that are in my phone, because I always have my phone with me, right? Or in an iPad if you've got one of those or whatever. So you can come up with patterns and you can save those. You can write whole tracks if you want and save them. And then as soon as you get back to a studio or into a live rig, you can just change the routing. And instead of sending that over Bluetooth MIDI to your phone, you can send it over DIN MIDI to an Electron box. You can send it via CV and gate to your modular or whatever. And then you can use those things that you sketched out using the Oxy One on your phone, and it's very small. So that's how I personally do it. But I will also say that depending on where you want to sketch, I would say that the Digitact is another great machine. I mean, all the Electron boxes in general, the newer ones. So whether you gel better with the synth workflow of the Digitone or Syntact, or if you gel better with the sample workflow of the Digitact, I would say Digitact and Syntact both better for sketching just because they have the ability to flip from audio to MIDI. So you can sketch and then flesh things out once you get back to your home studio, whether that involves fleshing it out by sending it to other synths or even to your DAW. I love the fact that you can take something on the Digitact or the Syntact, you can sketch it out using the internal synths or internal samples. Then when you get back to your DAW, you can hook up Overbridge and you can send out that MIDI or that audio or both to different things and say like, you know what, I kind of like this bass line, but it would be great if it was layered with two other things. So I can send that same MIDI to 3 channels and have it be layered with 2 soft synths and the voice from inside my machine. So as sketch pads, they're really, really good. So I would say, again, Deluge, Oxy One, and either the Digitact or the Syntact. Those would be my go-tos for sketch pads. And obviously, if you need battery power, that would favor the Oxy One or the Deluge, although you can use the Digitact and the Syntact with a Bird cord or a MyVolts cord and a battery pack. So it just kind of depends on your personal preferences. All right. Love the announcements from the little makers the most. Yeah, me too. It's always so cool to see. So much passion. The big companies of quality are good too, but you can't beat the really excited small firms. Yeah. I met these Italian guys last year that are called Morph Modular, and they make modular cases. And they have a really clever case, really well made, great materials. The way their power supply works is really good. They built in powered USB on the top of the case so you could put in lights and things like that. Like a lot of really cool thought went into what they were doing. So I'm looking forward to seeing their next iteration of their case this year. Let's see. How'd you compare the Oxy One to the Hapax? So similar. I think that, yeah, they're very similar. So it all comes down to kind of workflow preferences and size preferences. The Hapax is at least twice the size of the Oxy, and the Oxy I know has more MIDI outputs than the Hapax does. Hapax has a bigger screen, so it's a little bit easier to see things that way. They have similar workflows as far as saving patterns and building those into songs. But for the limited time that I've spent with the Hapax, it feels very similar to the Oxy. So I wouldn't say that I would give one a big, huge advantage. For me personally, the advantage would go to the Oxy because of the size. But functionally, I haven't seen a huge difference between those two machines. Be sitting on your studio table and not a travel device. So then the power supply thing isn't a big deal. So then I would say Digitact or Syntact, because you're going to get the most out of. You're going to get a song a lot farther in the machine with one of those than you would with almost anything else. And especially in a usable form, like with the Deluge, you can get a lot farther because you've got more tracks and you've got the ability to do more things. But a lot of it you wouldn't use in its basic form because like the synth engines aren't great. There's a limited number of knobs and a really tiny screen to be able to do any kind of manipulation or modifying of anything. So you run into some issues there. So if it was going to be to sit on a table and sketch, I would say the Digitact or the Syntact. And then that comes down to, do you prefer sample workflow or synth workflow? And whichever one you prefer, that's the one you go with. All right, let's see. You have a Deluge. Oh, cool. Well, then you know. And with the OLED upgrade, yeah, that was a huge game changer for them. Yeah, there's a lot of buttons. I mean, there's like, when you talk about menu diving, so the Deluge has menu diving and button combos because it does so much in a tiny little box. It's one of the things that Electron machines have this bad rep for workflow, but it's because people don't know the workflow and they just hear people talk about the Octatrack. So yes, the Octatrack is a beast. I mean, it's difficult to deal with. But when you're dealing with like something like the Digitact or Syntact or Detone or any of those, or Analog Rhythm, and even the more modern machines, Analog 4, if you want to go to the filter page, now you're on the filter page. It just takes one button, and then you have 8 parameters, and you've got 8 knobs right next to it, and they line up. So the parameter on the top left is the button on the top left. The parameter on the bottom right is the knob on the bottom right. So it's very, very logical. And then, let's say you want to go to your effects page. Now you're on the effects page. Let's say you want to go to an LFO. Now you're on the LFO. Whereas when you have something like the MC707, for example, it does a lot of things, but you've got that tiny screen, so you only have a couple of options that can get on the screen. So the only way to get 2 different functions, you can't have 8 different things with 8 knobs next to it. So you're going to have 1 knob and 8 menus deep. And so it's the only way to do the same stuff. And that's where I think Electron's done a really good job of balancing that. These machines could do more, and they get criticized that they don't try to cram more into the same machine. But the reality is, as soon as you cram more into the same machine, then you end up with this hostile workflow that's really difficult to maneuver. So I think that they're always walking that line between capability and user experience. I think it's really super, super important. But yeah, let's see. Oh, that's what attracted you to the 707, the synth engine. Yeah. So Roland in general have some of the best sounding machines out there. Their synth engines are phenomenal, but they're really difficult to maneuver. It's not a user-friendly workflow. My synth dad calls it a hostile workflow. So you've got to work through this really clumsy, uncomfortable, difficult, non-intuitive workflow to get to those great sounding synths. So the way I've overcome that over the years is sequencing their boutique instruments with things that have better user interfaces, whether it be an Electron machine or something like the Oxy One or the Hapex or even the Deluge. So take something that has a user interface that you like, and then get the Roland that has the synth engine that you like, or the synth engines that you like, and then sequence those that way, rather than trying to cram it all into one box and then wonder why it's complicated to use, because that's why it's complicated to use, because it tries to do way, way too much. Have the Syntact with the Digitact 2 be a solid addition to it? Yes. They're very similar machines. In that the workflow is the same. If you've used one, you can jump right into the other immediately as soon as you get it. What it comes down to, and I say this all the time, synth-based workflow versus sample-based workflow. So if you want synth and sample, you have 2 options. One is to get a Syntact and a Digitact, whether it's the 1 or the 2, depending on what kind of samples and tracks you have and need and whatever. Or you can get an Analog Rhythm Mark 1 or Mark 2, and then you have synth and sample in the same machine. But those are your options if you want to go down the Electron route. And I would suggest it only because the workflow is going to be user-friendly from one to the other. It's going to be similar enough that you don't have to start over from scratch to jump into something new, which is something I love about that workflow. Let's see here. Hapex is phenomenal for studio control. Yes. Use the FH2 to expand Eurorack integration. CC control and modulation is exhaustive. Yes. And same thing with the Oxy One. And that's why I said they're very similar. I have obviously you've seen here in my live setup, I have this Oxy One, and then back here on the drawer in my desk, I have this Oxy One, which this one is connected via USB to my MRCC MIDI controller, which is connected also to Ableton. in my computer. So I have that to control via the MRCC every synth that's in my studio and Ableton at the same time. And you can do all of that stuff. So you can send modulation, you can do Euclidean sequencing, you've got all the different types of sequencers, you've got, quantized random generation of notes in key, you have CV and gate output. Not sure also if you're familiar with the CV and gate outputs from the Oxy, but just to show you something in my setup here on my modular, I don't know if you can see, I might have to move something here. That, oops. Yeah, this module that's right here on the end, it's a module from Oxy that is called the Pipe. And what it does is it has this one cable that goes into it, which is an HDMI cable that's coming out of the Oxy One right here. So that HDMI out goes into a module that has 8 CV and 8 gate. So you don't have to patch your CV and gates from the outputs on the back of the Oxy into your machine and have a bunch of cables going in. You can leave everything patched to this unit when you travel. And then when it comes time to set up for your gig, you just roll up, you plug in one HDMI cable and your Oxy's patched to everything in your case. So having that kind of connectivity is really key, especially when we talk about travel, which, I think that was actually the point of this, but we ended up talking about a whole bunch of other things. We can talk some about travel too, but that for me is a big plus with the Oxy One, is the ability to have one cable to connect 8 CV and 8 gates. And then I also have one MIDI out that is going to the Oxy Split, and that's going one MIDI into the Oxy Choral, one MIDI into the DTAC, and then I don't have the other one going anywhere right now, but I have another MIDI out as well that I could send somewhere else. So tons and tons of connectivity, makes it really super handy to use. Is the Oxy One similar to the Deluge and heavy keyboard shortcuts? No, it's not. It's with the Oxy One, these are really the only keyboard things are just these things over here on the side. And most of them are, so you've got sequencer 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So those are all can be assigned to be different types of sequencers. I have them all set up as multi-track. So each one of them is an 8-track sequencer. So you've got 32 tracks of sequencing. And then you've got mod lanes and things like that. And then each one of these buttons basically has one primary function and then one shift function. So there's not a lot. It doesn't go very deep. The only menus is kind of like the config menu. If you go up into here, then you've got things that you kind of control with the knobs to go into different levels of the menu. But for the most part, there's not a ton of menu diving. It's 2 deep per button and then a very limited number of buttons that are here to do that. Whereas on the Deluge, every single button in all of the sequencers, which is actually even bigger than this one, every single one of them is a function. Because back with the old little screen, they couldn't have it really do much of anything. So you have all these combinations of things with 128 different buttons, I think it has. So it made it all kind of very complicated. With the Oxy One, they very much simplified all that down. Again, it doesn't do as much because the Oxy One has no internal voices, and the Deluge has to be able to control parameters of synths and samplers and sample chopping and things like that, which the Oxy doesn't have to do. So it doesn't need to be as complex. So again, kind of like what we were talking about with the Electron versus the MC707, if you pare back what it does and you make it a bit more of a specialist, it makes it a lot easier to have a workflow that people can actually work. Whereas when you get really, really, really complicated machines like the Octatrack, like the MC707, like an MPC, the MPC Live, they become complicated to the point where they're a real bear to operate. The workflow isn't as friendly. So yeah, I would definitely take a look at that as you're thinking about what kind of gear you're going to get. Look at capability versus ease of use, and know that there's always going to be a trade-off or a balance that has to be struck between those. you ever tried the Circlon? Once, and it was very cool, super cool synthesizer, or super cool sequencer. I like the feel of it. I love those old like TR-909 style buttons that it has. But again, a lot of pretty much everything that the Circlon does has been built into the Oxy One. So functionality wise, I've already got that all built into here, so I don't need that. I do like the machine itself. I love the look and feel. I love the type of buttons that it has and stuff like that. But from a functionality standpoint, I've already got what it does in the Oxy, plus a lot more. So this does what that does, plus tons more things, and for a fraction of the price. Even though the Oxy is not cheap, it's way cheaper than the Circlon. So yeah, but I haven't used it a ton, but when I did use it, I enjoyed it. Is your synth luggage case waterproof for rainy weather? Yes. So let's talk about that for a second while we're here. I'm gonna switch. I can use my phone as a camera with this live streaming software, so I'm gonna put that on here so we can walk to the other side of the room and I can show you kind of what I've got going on here. Let's see here. I think I have to remove it and add it back in again. Here we go. Sorry about this. Okay, it says it's connecting. Is it really? Maybe we won't be able to do this. All right, let me try to close this and open it. The beauty of using apps instead of other stuff. But in the meantime, chuck some more questions in there. We'll talk a little bit about the packing and how I put my gear away and where I put it and what goes where. And actually, while we do that, I'm gonna pack some of it up because I'm leaving first thing tomorrow morning. So I want to show you guys how I am actually packing it up. Let's see here. Go. The setup that I use, by the way, for streaming is called Mevo, and it's from, added some extra voice in there. It's from Logitech, actually. And it has these little cameras, which I think I showed one of them. Yeah, here, I'll show you the cameras as well. It comes with a pack of 3 cameras that look like this. And they are Wi-Fi enabled. They charge via USB-C. You can record directly to them, or they stream live to an iPad or an iPhone, or I think they do to Android as well, but they stream to an app, and then from that app you can direct what you're doing. So that's how I'm switching between camera views and going back and forth and showing an overhead, because they've got different cameras and it's really easy to set those up. And then that can stream live to multiple things at once. So I could stream this on YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitch, Instagram. Like you can stream to everything at once if you want. I'm just doing this to YouTube right now, but it's cool, and it's for what it does. It's a pretty reasonably priced setup. It's just under $1,000, but you get 3 cameras, free software, the ability to record, edit. They're all wireless. They're very small. They're handy, and I think the quality is pretty good. I mean, I've been pretty happy with how these have been looking. And then you have this app that's called Mevo Go, which goes to your phone, and then I can switch this. And here we are. And it can switch it to a phone view, which then I can control just the same way that I would control any other phone. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn it around so that we can go over here, and I'm gonna show you. So the gear that I use, my backpack is the Nomadic travel pack. And this is where I will pack the machines. So like Octatrack, Digitac 2, and Oxy One will all go in that backpack. And then I have the Away travel case, which is aluminum and waterproof, and so it's very durable. And so with this one, when this opens up, you've got two sides, and in this side, my modular case fits just in this side. I actually put it inside the Erica Sense bag, which it fits in there perfectly, and that provides some padding. And then that whole bag with the modular case goes in this side, and then this closes over the top of it. So that's the only thing that goes in that side. Then this side over here can be all for clothes and toiletries and like normal other stuff that you would take with you. And sometimes I put cables in there. Sometimes I put them in the bag as well with the Erica Sense, or in the Erica Sense bag with the modular. And then the Octatrack, the Detact, and the Oxy go in the Nomadic bag. Then I have this stuff, which this case right here, which you can see kind of is the size of my hand, just for scale. This is my whole camera setup that I'm bringing to Superbooth. I'm actually going to switch back to this overhead view, so that way I don't have to use my hands for the camera. So this one, just show you guys when this opened up. So I'm going to be using the Insta360 so that I can film kind of everything, and then I can edit afterwards. So when I'm doing interviews and stuff, or if I'm checking out gear, I'm just going to put the Insta360 on a tripod next to whatever we're doing. So I've got basically like a selfie stick that has a tripod that goes onto the bottom of it, and the Insta360 goes on top. So then I don't have to worry about pointing the camera and shooting. So I can be talking to people and doing it and messing with things with both hands. And I don't have to worry about that I missed the shot. And then when I go back to edit, I can just kind of crop in on whatever I'm looking at. So I can point it at whatever I want to, I can point it to whatever I want to use. So this little case right here, believe it or not, is my whole setup. So camera, 2 extra batteries plus the one that's in the camera, and then a 3 battery charger. And then this little case is the DJI microphone setup, which is clip-on lav mic, which I actually, sorry, that was that one as well. It's what I'm using right now. So I have one of them, you can see here that it's like magnetically attached to my shirt. And then it's sending to a transmitter that's over on my mixer, but that transmitter fits in here as well. And each one of these little mics has a 3.5 millimeter input, so you can have something go into it. So then what I bring with me is these cables. So when I want to record the sound out from a synth while I'm at Superbooth and talk with a microphone at the same time, whether I'm interviewing somebody or just talking myself, I can have one of those, the lav mics, act as the mic for voice. And then this one can go, it's got 2 outputs that come out from the synth, and that goes into a stereo in that goes into one of the mics. And then that broadcasts to the transmitter, which is connected to the camera. So then I can record separate audio from the voice and from the synth and have it go in with the video that's coming in on the camera. So I get both audio and video. And then I've got, for if there's something that has a single stereo out, I've got that cable as well, but it's basically just to go into that same machine. And then, let's see, what else do we have here on the table? Showing you guys all my stuff, all of what I'm bringing with me. So this bag is for the headphones that I'm wearing right now, which are the III. They're Bluetooth and also the no latency headphones. This is a little gimbal for my phone that also has the tripod, and this screws onto that as well. So that's for my Insta360. So it's like basically one tripod that goes for both. And then Bluetooth transmitter for audio. This is a cool little USB stick that has an input for phone on one side, and then you can flip it. It's got USB-C on the other side, so I can download footage that I've taken with my camera and load it directly into my my computer with that. USB sticks, which are audio because I'm playing a DJ show while I'm there. And then also for the DJ show while I'm there, this is important as well. This is going to be the outputs from my from the Octatrack. So basically the main outs from what I'm performing. And these are 1/4 inch to RCA, because the show that I'm playing in Brussels, I'll be going into a DJ mixer from my stuff, because the DJ mixer is what goes to the house. I'm not going directly like into a DIY box into a main house mixer. So I'm going into a DJ mixer. So having 1/4 inch to RCA cables is really important, or having 1/4 to RCA adapters is kind of your other option in this realm. And then this is the same if I wanted to come out of my modular into a DJ mixer. This is 3.5 millimeter to RCA. So I bring a lot of different cables, and that's why I'll go into this box right here. Let me switch back to the overhead view. There we go. So we don't have to hold things anymore. This is like kind of my emergency bag. I bring this to every gig, whether I'm playing locally, whether I'm playing somewhere else. And it's basically just a bag of the most important backup cables that I need to bring with me. The things that would be something that could go wrong that you always kind of want to have there. So extra 1/4 inch, extra patch cables. I use 3.5 millimeter to 1/4 to come out of here. So I've got backups of those. I've got adapters here for RCA. I've got down in the bottom here, I have RCA to 1/4, and I also have 1/4 to RCA. I've got MIDI cables, USB cables, basically backups of everything that could make things go wrong. Headphone adapters, because you can never have too many of those. And so this bag, I just keep this as a bag of like kind of my backup emergency cables. And anytime I'm going to play a gig, I just take this and chuck it in my bag, because I always know what's in here. And if I know that I use something during a show that's in here, I'll take it out, or I'll make sure that I replenish it when I get back. So let's say a MIDI cable goes bad, so I use the backup MIDI cable from here. As soon as I get back into my studio, one of the first things I do is replenish that and put a new backup MIDI cable in here, in addition to the one that becomes part of my live setup. And then another thing we've got here is battery pack, USB battery pack. You can never have too many of those when you travel. And that is all of that kind of backup stuff that goes here. So then, just to show you guys really quickly, because I think that this is one of the things that nobody really talks about a lot, is how to set up and break down really quickly. And I would recommend, before we get into this, I would recommend, if you're going to be playing live shows and you're going to be going out and playing, practice taking your rig apart and putting it together. Break it down to like bare bones and recable everything a bunch of different times, so you become really familiar with how to do that. Because more than likely, you're going to be trying to do it in a dark, loud environment. If you're playing in a club, a lot of times you're going to have to set up when the show's already started. You may not even get a sound check, which is great if you can do it. I recommend it highly if you can, but a lot of times you can't. There's a lot of times even playing live events where there's only space for 1 or 2 artists, and there might be 5 or 6 or 7 people playing. So while one's playing, the other will break down, and then the next person sets up, and then they play, that person breaks down while the other sets up. So you need to be really good at setting up and breaking down your gear in the dark. and in a loud environment. And don't count on being able to have a light from your phone, as that looks weird on stage. It's hard to hold your phone with the light while you're doing other stuff. And so just get really good at it. And that means simplify down your setup as much as you can in order to make this an efficient changeover process. So to show you that just a little bit here, just to show you how quick it is to break down my whole modular setup, all I need to disconnect in order to pull this machine is 2 cables here, which is my output from the mixer into the Octatrack. I take those out. I take out the power supply, which if you notice, I have my case backwards, and that's on purpose. I cabled it backwards and set it up backwards because I wanted the power supply facing me, because I didn't want it on the side of where the audience is, because often the audience is close and I didn't want them to knock it out or accidentally hit my power switch. So I turned my machine around, turned my case around and set it up this way so that everything was on my side, so that I could protect it basically from other people. So 2 cables out for audio, 1 cable out for power, 1 cable here, which is my HDMI cable that is going to all of my CV and gate in here. Then I have 1 MIDI cable going to the Oxy, and I have 1 clock cable going to the PAMs, which then clocks other things. And now this is totally separate. I can take this out and load it into my bag, which I will show you that now. Let's see, how do I do this? I need more hands or more cameras or more tripods. All right, so I'm gonna switch to this one so you can see again. So this goes into this bag, which I'll set it down here for a second. This is the bag it's the Erica Synths bag that is for the Percons, which is why I originally got it. And it also works for the Syntrex, but it also fits perfectly a 6U84 modular. So that goes right in there. It has these little straps that can hold it in place. If you notice, all of my cables in here are 90 degree. They're all the Luigi's modular 90 degree cables. And the reason I do that is because I put this strap to hold this in place, and I don't put a lid on the top of this. And so I didn't want these to be sticking up so that either the tension from the strap or moving around within this would snap off one of my patch cables. So now I can tighten that down, and now that doesn't move around in there. And I've got space around it on all sides that I can put power supplies if I want. And then I'll put other things in there too. I'm gonna have to set this phone down for 1 sec. And I'll show you what this looks like afterwards. Yeah, so there. So now that bag fits in this side of my carry-on bag. And then I just close this down like that. And then you've got the whole thing protected with the padding from the bag, and then it's inside a hard aluminum waterproof carry-on. So it gives it kind of the same as having a specific case for it. So yeah, so that's what we do with the modular. So that goes in that half of the case. And then the rest of the breakdown here have this stand, which is, I think it was like $14 on Amazon, and it's a laptop stand, and it comes apart in 3 pieces. So then you've got 2 sides and a top, and this can go really easily in your bag. And then the other thing to look at with your gear when you're breaking it down and when you are packing things up and when you're kind of going through what am I bringing, what am I not bringing, you basically have 3 signal paths. you have a power supply path, you have an audio path, and you have a MIDI path. And I tend to set those up and break those down in order all together. So I don't just take everything and chuck it all in a bag and hope I didn't miss something. So basically what I'll do is I'll go through here and I'll just unplug it all. So I've got everything free to take my machines out. But then I will organize all of these pieces once they're out. So now I've got the Octatrack that can come out of here. It's all on its own. And we'll do the same thing here so you can see. This one comes over and goes to the backpack, to the Nomadic here. So this one flips up and the Octatrack fits in there really nicely. Then we've got the Digitac 2. I'm just going to put my deck saver on that so it doesn't get crushed. That comes in here just like that. And then right here on the side is where I put the Oxy. And then right here is where I have space for my bag of random stuff, my backup stuff. And then that closes down and that becomes my personal item that I take on. You'll see that I have some things over here like breakfast and mint tea that I love. So that will go with me as well. And those all get packed in there. And so that's the simple way to get that sorted. And then what I'll do is I'll go signal path by signal path. So I've got audio cables for one machine. Take my stands out of here. These are the Modbang stands, by the way, which I'll show you how those come apart in a second. So audio signal path for Digitac 2, audio signal path for modular. Those are both going into the Octatrack. So then I'll just keep those in one spot. Then I'll do the same for MIDI. It's all kind of going through the Oxy split. So I pull everything out of that. And then I've got Oxy split, MIDI out from the Oxy 1 into that. And then I've got MIDI cables that are connecting Oxy split to Digitac 2, Digitac 2 to Octatrack. So then I'll just get those all together. And then I usually have one other MIDI cable because I was going out to the Syntact before, but because I'm not doing that, I don't need it. I don't need that extra MIDI cable. So it's just one less. And then I have TRS MIDI, which is coming from the split into the Choral. So that goes there. And then I've got my clock, which is coming out from the Oxy 1 into the PAMs. So that's kind of all my clock stuff. And then I've got my one cable that connects to all of my CV and gate, which is my HDMI cable. And that comes out there. This is USB-C power for the Oxy. Right now it's running on battery power, so we don't get any kind of a hum, but that goes there. And then the last thing that I have left is 3 power cables. One that's for the Octatrack, one that's for the Digitac 2, and one that's for the modular case. And so I will wrap those up and unplug those and stick those in the box. And then that's it. That's my whole cabling setup right there, except for the 3 power supplies. And then we have the Oxy 1 goes into its little case here, just like that, which is actually kind of a big case. I hope they do a deck saver for this soon. I've heard that it's coming, which I will be very excited for, because as you see that, because it's going into relatively tough luggage, and because it's going with me and not being packed into a carry-on, I don't need a full case for everything because the luggage acts as the case as long as I'm padding it correctly. And so I don't really need a case for the Oxy One, but since there's no deck saver for it, I don't want to snap off one of the knobs. So as soon as there's a deck saver, I'll put a deck saver in it. And then this goes to here. And again, Oxy One is the last thing that goes in here. And that just kind of fits right there on the side. And then that gets closed up and that's good to go. So all the boxes are in the Nomadic travel pack. Then modular on one side of this. I've got another side for clothes and toiletries and my little camera bag and all that kind of stuff that will go in there. And cables. And that's pretty much the size of it. That's pretty much the whole packing routine. And so you can see how quickly it packs away. It's just as quick to set up. So when I get to a place, because I have everything all together, I've got kind of, I have this many cables is all I really need to cable everything, plus my bag of my backup cables. So I've just got this many cables. So what I will basically do when I get to a place is I will put together the stands for my 2 Electron machines and that little laptop stand that my modular case goes on. And then I will take out the boxes and the modular case. I'll put them in there, I'll put them on their stands, and then I'll go signal path by signal path. So first I'll do power, or it doesn't really matter the order you do it in. So you'll do MIDI, all of the MIDI you'll run, then you'll do audio, all of the audio you'll run, and then power, or whichever order you want to do it. And then I'll generally power it up and press play on my Oxy One. And if all of the sequencers go and they all start and stop together when I press play, I know that the MIDI path is working. So then I'll check the audio path. I usually put on headphones and put into the headphone jack of the Octatrack. So then I will just double check that each one of the audio signal paths is working and that I don't have a bad cable or something that I forgot to cable, and just make sure that that goes. And then once that goes, I'm ready to go. Then I can either do a sound check if I have one, or I can jump right into performance if I need to. Make sure that I've got my outputs going to the house, whether that's going to a DJ mixer or whether it's going to a DI box that's going out to a main audio mixer for the house. So you can see it's very quick to set up, it's very quick to break down, and it fits into 2 bags that all go into as hand luggage, so I don't need to take anything else with me. I will show you also, I'll do a little plug here for Matthew's Cool Things. He came up with these, he sells these on the Modbang website, and they are these super cool little screw together stands. And you would say, why do you need the stand? Well, what it allows you to do is to run things underneath. So you saw that I had the Oxy One in the front, and it has those outputs in the back. This way they can go underneath the Digitac 2, and they can go underneath the Octatrack. And if you had multiple Electron boxes or another synth or something, you can have one without the case or without the stand, and then all those outputs go underneath, and then you've got the stand here, and it just elevates it up and it keeps it flat, which is great when you're working on it standing up from above. Most stands are angled, and angled is great for home use when you are sitting in a chair and you want to use something that's in front of you. But when you're performing live, you're performing live from above it. Basically, you're standing above the table. And so that allows you to do that if you've got a case or if you've got a stand that's flat. So these are great because they've got these little screws that take these apart that have it's kind of like a wide barreled screw that's rough around the edge, so you don't need a tool to take it apart. So you can just pull off one side and pull off the other side like that. And then you just screw the screw in so you don't lose it. I also have in my little bag of backup emergency tricks, I have extras of these screws in case I lose one in transport. But you see the stand basically breaks down to these things. So this can go really easily anywhere. It can fit in between things or next to stuff. And that's all you've got to go with your case or with your stand. I keep calling it a case, I don't know why. And then this stand is exactly the same. These side pieces are the same for both of them, and they've just got longer ones for the Octatrack or the Digiboxes, or they've got a way that you can screw them together now. So you can have one that'll do like multiple if you wanted to do that as well. But yeah, these they break down super fast and they set up super fast, which, as I was mentioning before, is kind of key when you're going into a performance and you don't know what it's going to be. You don't know if you're going to have a sound check. You don't know if you're going to have the time to do anything. This allows you to put things together and take things apart really super easily and super fast. And then that's it. That's my stands, those. And then this is the stand for the modular. And that's it. So those just go inside. I usually put those inside the side where like the clothes and toiletries and stuff go, but you can put them anywhere. I've put them also into the box or into the Erica Synths side as well, into that case. The other thing that's that I love about setting things up this way is I will use half of that carry-on, the rolling carry-on, to put like clothes, toiletries, my tea, things like that. But I don't want to take my, I don't want to take my underwear to the gig when I'm going to the gig. So what I love about this is that when I get to the hotel, I can just pop that Erica Synths bag out of my rolling carry-on. And then when I go to the gig, all I bring is that Erica Synths bag and the backpack. And I don't need to take my whole rolling case with me, and I can just put everything that I want. I can put these stands into the outside bag or the outside pocket of the Erica Synths bag, and then I can just take that. So that way, when I go to the gig, I just have a backpack and then my one kind of sling bag, and I can take those together, and I don't have to take my full carry-on with toiletries and all that stuff to the gig, or unpack everything and leave it in the hotel, and that can be a hassle too. So this way, it gives me an easy way to carry it, but at the same time, it's also a really handy way to kind of pack everything away. So let's take a look and see if through all of that bunch of stuff, if anybody had any questions or comments. It's better to send out left to right mix or left to right stem for drums, left to right for instruments. So the way the performance template's set up is it has left and rights coming in from drums and melodic, and then it mixes those together in the mixer, and you've got certain effects that affect each one differently. But if you're talking about going out from that to the house, I will always send out a left and right mix. Especially if it's going out to, to a house mixer. I don't want to count on them to mix my drums separately from my melodics, because I don't know. You'll have different levels of sound guys in every venue that you go to. So some of them are going to be really good, and they've got a lot of experience, and they're used to mixing bands, and they can help you. Some of them might just be like a guy who's never done this before, who's just there to make sure that things are if the level sounds good. So I prefer to have control over that myself and send it out. Yeah, and it doesn't really matter what's going out on those. It can be left and right in a stereo mix, or it could be just left and right going out with the same thing and having it be dual mono, because most clubs are mono anyway. because they have to be, because you don't want to have the sound be different for the person in the front of the room on the left than the back of the room on the right. You want them to hear the same things. So most nightclubs that you'll perform in, if you're playing in a nightclub, are going to be mono anyway. So the stereo thing doesn't change anything. See, sounds like having to break down and assemble my M16 in boot camp. Exactly, Full Metal Jacket style. Yeah, a little less crazy, a little less psycho than Full Metal Jacket. But yeah, it's, you know, as with anything, there's a reason why they do that in the military, is because you're gonna have to break something down and put it together in a less than ideal environment. You're gonna be doing it, you know, under pressure, or you know, in the heat of battle, or when something's dirty, or when you're in less than perfect conditions. So they have you break things down and rebuild them a lot so that you build up muscle memory. And that's why I suggest doing the exact same thing with your live setup. You know, we tend to get things set up in a perfect way, and then when we have to break it down and go perform, it may be the first time we've ever uncabled our setup since we had it all put together. So I would say, take it apart, pack it in a bag, take it out of the bag, put it together, cable everything, test it. Take it apart, put it in the bag, and do that over and over again until you're really comfortable doing it. Then dim the lights in your room to where it's pretty dark, and try to do it there as well, so that where you can't see everything really well, and you can't see the writing to know where your inputs and outputs are. You know, you can't always see. There was a time I went to a gig where I plugged one side into the Q outs of the Octatrack and the other side into A's and B's, and I couldn't figure out why I didn't have any drums, because they were just moved over one set of inputs in the back. So just make sure that you've got that all sorted out, and in a way that you feel really comfortable with. Yeah, that cracked me up, the Full Metal Jacket reference. It's very much the same thing. Tearing down and setting up sounds awful. Been working on a portable setup with Dig Attack, Oxy One, Fader Fox. All I need is to plug into a master out and I'm ready to go. So yes, but do you have them all? Do you have a way that you can travel with them all connected together so you don't have to break them down? So like, you could put this all into a flight case or into a DJ case or whatever, as long as that case is your carry-on, as long as it all fits into the size of a carry-on and can fit and fits the airline's carry-on rules, so that you can do that. Otherwise, you have to check it. Then if you check it, it's going to get kicked around, thrown around, beat up. It may not make it to your gig. It may not make it there. So, you know, it's a trade-off. Like, yeah, would you rather have the hassle of setting up and breaking down, or would you rather have the hassle of none of your gear showing up to the gig and then you can't play? So yeah, it all comes down to what you want. I kind of go back to the Full Metal Jacket reference. They do that because those soldiers that are setting up and breaking down their gear in less than ideal scenarios, they're basically planning for things to go wrong. So they're setting it up and breaking it down a lot of times so that when something goes wrong, they don't have to hassle with it. They know. They're like, okay, yeah, I could do this with my eyes closed. So I would rather practice for the worst possible occasion and then have it never happen. That would be great. Let's see. European power adapter. Great question that I should show you guys, because this has been a super cool purchase that I made a while back. Let's see here. And you reminded me that I needed to get it out anyway, which is a good thing. I'd hate to forget this. Let's see. It's all the way in the bottom, because I haven't been to Europe in a while. All the way in the bottom of my power supplies. So this was a super cool find on Amazon. And here we go. For those of you who are coming from Europe to the US, I'm sure you can find the exact opposite. But this is a power strip that has a European plug on one end that goes into the power strip, but then has US plugs in the power strip. And it also has USB power. So I can power the Oxy One from this and charge it. When I had the 1010 black box, I was powering that off of this as well. And then you've got your 3 powers. So I've got 1 for my modular case and 2 for the electron boxes. And you may be asking what happened when you had more than those 2 electron boxes. So then I had one of the electron power supplies that had a European plug on it, that was one that I had gotten a while back. So I would take that with me, or I would have an individual adapter for that additional piece. And so I would generally use the individual adapter for my modular case because of the bigger power draw. And then I would plug the multiple electron boxes into this. And so then I have one output, European style, that goes to multiple US inputs. So yes, great question, and thanks for reminding me. Let's see here. Really appreciate you sharing this with us, though. It's very helpful. Well, I'm glad. That's why I'm doing it. That's the whole reason why I'm here, is to try to help, because I got to do this anyway. I have to break this down and pack it up anyway, because I'm leaving tomorrow morning, and figured I would show it because I do get asked about this a lot more than you would think. So I thought that, yeah. I think it has to be a challenge for flying versus playing local. Setting up a pedal board setup that would totally be impractical trying to fly with. Yeah, it's, again, it comes down to where you're going and how you're going. So I would say probably 80 to 90% of my gigs, I'm getting on a plane to go to them, whereas only about 10% are going to be local here in Denver. And so I really built my whole setup around what I just showed you, around how to put it into this set of luggage. That, even that modular case. So last year I was traveling with that modular case over there, which is a 6U104 case, and that could still go as carry-on, but it had to be my carry-on. And then I had my backpack still for the boxes. So I could take that and have the backpack, but then where do I put clothes and toiletries and all that stuff? So then I always had to check a bag. So even if I was going just for like 2 days to go play a show somewhere, I still had to check a bag for clothes. And maybe that didn't arrive or whatever. So this way I have that whole side of the rolling carry-on that can be clothes. And because of the amount of traveling I have done in my life, whether for music or work or otherwise, I've gotten really good at traveling very, very light. So clothes-wise, I'll often bring much less than what most people would bring, and then I'll just wash them at the hotel. So most hotels have laundry facilities, like the one I'm staying at in Berlin has a laundry. If not, I actually have, I can show you guys this too. This is very much the insider stuff that has very little to do with music, but a lot to do with travel. I got off of this backpacking website, I got these little things right here, which I don't know if you can see, but if you open up these case, these are little like paper tabs that come out of here, and they are laundry detergent that dissolves when you put it in water. So I always have those in my bag just in case. So if there's not laundry facility somewhere, you can wash in the sink. And so you just take those and dissolve the little paper tabs in the sink, and then you can wash your clothes that way and hang them to dry in your room. And because they're so tiny and so light, they kind of go along with this whole pack light thing. So I could basically do my whole trip just with what I can fit into that bag. So that way I don't have to bring a whole bunch of extra junk or check bag, because losing check bags, I have a fear of. So let's see here. Pack your own power strip. Yes, you saw that one. Cool. Bongo ties, I've actually tried those. They take up a lot of space. So I actually use, if I have any extras here, basically use the Velcro ties so that I can tie everything together. So that way it stays, things stay tied together, but they also are much lighter. Those bongo ties, they do take up a bunch of space when you've got dozens of cables, and then they're like getting caught on each other. So I just use the Velcro ones. But yeah, it definitely helps. Let's see here. Circo merch available at the Superbooth. All the merch that I have in my web store is all print on demand. So no, there won't be merch available there. But you can go on the website anytime you want. And if you're one of my Patreons, depending on the level that you are, you get a discount on that stuff there, which is pretty cool too. But I'll have stuff there that I'll be wearing, so you can see it at least, so you can see if you like it or not, if you want to buy something. But yeah, go to the circolive.com/shop, and that's where you can get all that stuff. Don't have a lot of room to bring back stuff you buy. I don't. You're right. maybe that's subconsciously on purpose so that I don't buy stuff and bring it back. Last year, I actually came back with a couple of pieces of equipment from companies that wanted me to do videos about them. And so I ended up actually buying like a carry-on size bag at the airport in Berlin so that I could pack everything into it. And I juggled stuff around so that the bag that I bought was a check bag. So I could just put all the clothes and cables and stands and like non-essential stuff, because I was headed home. So it didn't really matter if something didn't show up on time. So, but I didn't put any of the gear in there. So I still kept all the gear in the carry-ons. But yeah, it is a challenge to bring stuff back. But yeah, I wish. Do I need a special visa to perform? It kind of depends. It depends on where you're performing and how, and if you're making money for it, or if it's something that you're doing as part of a promotional thing. But yes, in general, you do need visas to perform. For things like this, the things tend to be a little bit more casual. So like for the things that I'm doing at Superbooth, they're not paid. So I'm just going to be doing those demos and things like that as part of my my stuff for helping them out. So in those cases, you don't need a visa, because you're just doing it. You're just playing as if you were going as a tourist. But in a lot of cases, you do need a visa to perform, and it just kind of depends. So if you're being paid, and if they're paying for your flights and things like that, then generally yes, for most places, you do need a visa. But they're relatively, well, I shouldn't say that. Depending on where you're from, depending on where you live, they're relatively easy to get, especially the temporary ones that are just for certain things. Like the US is a really difficult place to get a working visa for, and you would need a certain type of working visa for this. But this is actually a pretty easy type of visa to get. It just takes a little time and money to apply for, to come to the US with one of those. And I think it's called an artistic exchange visa. So it's basically for performers and artists that are coming to do something. So they know you're not coming to, move here and work full time. They know it's a temporary thing, and the visas tend to generally last like 6 months at the most. So you can just kind of come and do a tour or whatever and then head back. You're making me want to strive to be cool enough for someone to give me enough shit about my music that I need to fly for shows. Yes, well, it is, I will not ever take this for granted. I do appreciate the fact that I get to travel and do shows. I've gotten to, whether it be through DJing or playing live, I've gotten to travel all over the world and play in some really amazing places, some of the coolest venues you could ever imagine. And I appreciate it every single time I go because, as I said, I've never made a living doing this, and never, I knew I never would. It was never really kind of in the works. It wasn't to be, kind of rich and famous artist. And it's really mostly been for the experiences. And so because of that, it makes me really live the experience and appreciate the experience even more than I think I would if I was, making tons of money and traveling all over the place just to do that. I love to travel. I love to fly. I love that. You'll see that because I'm going to do some kind of travel vlog type stuff over the next few days while I'm doing this trip, because there's some interesting travel that's on that, but it'll be all as it relates to music. I want to show you guys like what it's like to travel to do music, what it's like to do music while you travel, and what you can bring with you to make that easier or more fun or more effective or whatever. But yeah, because I love to travel and because I do travel a ton for my day job, for my consulting work, one of the big advantages is that I build up a ton of points. And so when I do these trips, it allows me to do the trips, for free or very low cost, just from the points that I built up from work travel. So it just makes it be a perk of work. So that's nice. So whether it's points and miles that get you tickets, or points and miles that get you upgrades, or lounge access or whatever, you'll see a bunch of that on the videos that I do over the next few days, because I was able to use some points and miles for these trips to make the trips as much fun as the destination. So that's what I try to do whenever I can. It doesn't always work out that way, but for this time it did. So it should be lots of fun. So anyway, I will be headed out first thing tomorrow morning to go to Berlin to Superbooth. I'll be, as I said, vlogging, whether it's live or whether I'm making videos and editing them and then putting them out over the course of this time. For the trip to Berlin, while I'm in Berlin, a little bit of visiting around there. I'm excited to go see, Schneidersleden, the synth shop there, go do a bit of the touristy things, plus all the people that I get to see. Then, of course, there's the Superbooth part. I'm going to be doing a bunch of coverage of Superbooth itself and gear that interests me and that people on this channel or on my Patreon have told me about, that they want to see. And I'll try to show you my favorite stuff that I saw and some of the coolest new unusual things that may not be getting a bunch of the press out there, whether it be because it's a small person or a small company or because they haven't been announced yet. So I'll try to show that as much as I can, and then I'll do a recap at the end of kind of the coolest things I saw and coolest people I met and things that I did and all that kind of stuff. And then from Berlin, I'm going to be traveling to Brussels. So a little bit more travel there. I'm going to be going by train, which is always super fun. As an American, it's always way more fun to go to Europe and travel by train, because our train system here sucks. When we have a train that goes somewhere, the trains are awful. So it's nice to go to a place that has actually good trains that are fun and comfortable and nice to ride in. And then I'll be in Brussels for a show on the 24th. So if you're anywhere near Brussels, if you're, in the Netherlands, or if you're in the western part of Germany or in eastern part of France or whatever, take the train over and check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I would love to hang out and see some of you guys at those events. And if you're able to hang out and show me around the cities, that would be also very cool. Then I will be traveling on the 25th. I fly from Brussels to Seattle, and I'll be in Seattle for a couple days, playing a show on the 27th with EasyBot and a bunch of other cool Seattle folks. And it's a Desert Hearts event, so there's a bunch of bigger DJs, house music DJs that'll be playing that as well. It's a multi-room event, so we'll have an all live hardware room. So if you're in Seattle, please come see that one. I would love to see a bunch of you there. And again, like I said, if you're at any of these events, please come up, introduce yourself, say where you've seen these things, because it's always very cool to me, again, because I do this, alone in a basement studio. So it's nice to actually have the human side of it and the interaction and chat with people and meet people and nerd out about this stuff in public. So Thank you guys very much for tuning in. That's going to be it for today. I'm going to finish packing and go get something to eat and then get some sleep and leave. I think I have to leave the house tomorrow morning at about 3-ish, 3:30, something like that. So it'll be an early morning, but I will talk to you guys from the road. And if any questions come up or anything that you want to know based on what you saw today, or something comes up based on, these trips or travels or anything like that, please put those down in the comments below. And please give the videos a like, share them with people, things like that, because it definitely helps. We were talking earlier about growing a following, growing an audience, and this is obviously something that helps that. So yeah, if you could help spread the word, that's always a big plus, and it makes things better, and it supports me and helps me be able to continue to do these things for you guys. So thank you very much. I appreciate it, and hope to see you all at some of the events. And in the meantime, keep an eye out on this channel for all the stuff, the coverage from Superbooth and the travels getting there and all that stuff. So thank you guys very much for tuning in, and hope to see you soon. Thanks again. Cheers.